It all begins when he arrives at a temple to introduce himself to his new tenant, but no one seems to be around. Uryu decides to look around when he hears the sound of girls changing in the next room. He narrowly escapes the usual walk-into-plot scene, but the door suddenly flies open, and Uryu notices the planets sitting on the girls' chests.
Oh my.
The door closes again, and Uryu hopes he can pretend he didn't just experience a second solar system, but the girls return to give him hell for peeping. The girls turn out to be shrine maidens, and Uryu later explains that he's supposed to be moving in with them. The tsundere sister refuses to accept that some creeping Tom would be staying with them, so Uryu asks for the priest to prove it. Unfortunately, their granddad won't be back till the next day. The girls then introduce themselves. There's Asadi, the youngest sister who secretly wants her V-card swept aggressively, Yaa, the older sister who sounds like she's permanently on acid, and Yuna, who's got a successful future as a Karen. Uryu is thankful they're all weirdos, so he doesn't have to pretend to play nice with them. His only interest is in the pages of his book. At this, Yuna grudgingly warns him to be on his best behavior if he hopes to get dinner. Later, Yaa shows Uryu to his room, claiming to have cleaned up for his sake. However, when she opens the door to the overstuffed closet, Uryu rushes to save her from being pummeled by garbage. Yuna runs in to check on them and finds Uryu getting buried under Yaa's golden globes, causing her to unleash the beast. Later, Uryu returns to studying when Asadi appears and suggests they get to know each other better. When Uryu refuses her company, Asadi worries that his trouser equipment doesn't work right. She then decides to comb through his luggage for proof that he can get it up at night. Uryu tries to stop her but slips on some shorts and lands right on her. When Yuna comes in to check on them, she finds Uryu's bolt too close to Asadi's nut and turns into Godzilla. Later, Uryu still struggles to study, so he decides to take a potty break. When he sees the light on in one of the rooms, he goes to check who's still up and finds Yuna spread out on the floor. To stop her from catching a cold, he grabs a blanket for her, but Yuna wakes up at the wrong time and thinks he's up to no good. She freaks out, causing the other sisters to walk in on them playing body twisters. They shut the door for their own sanity, but Uryu tries to explain that he prefers his hand over girls, prompting Yuna to scatter salt on his evil. Afterward, they all sit together, and Uryu asks what Yuna was doing up so late. He notices the papers on the table, so the girls explain that they're omamori charms. Yuna insists that she had to do it alone, so that Uryu's jizz-stained hands would never touch them, making Uryu ask why she would go that far if it doesn't make any money. At that, the girls begin to pull out the red strings from their hair, explaining that shrine maidens help to connect people who need help to the gods. They then make their prayers with the red string wrapped around their hands. Uryu asks if the string is necessary, so they explain that the strings are something their mother left behind. Even though their mother is gone now, the string still helps them connect to her. Yuna asks Uryu what he was doing up to, so he says he was studying as usual. When he says he's trying to get into a prestigious medical school, the girls are surprised that he didn't just want to wank himself to death. The girls tell him that some of the gods are said to grant success in passing exams, and they're in the season of miracles. Apparently, there's a magical star shower happening soon, and legend says that if you let the stardust fall on you, your wish will come true. When Yuna assures him that the gods will surely hear his prayer, Uryu calls it a load of bull. As Uryu explains that the impact of a meteor would turn you into a pancake, Yuna goes pale from his blasphemy. To make it worse, Uryu insists they must have fairy tales for brains, so Yuna finally loses it and tries to perform a ritual to curse the knave fool. Thankfully, Yaa manages to stop her. The next day, more and more visitors come to the shrine while Uryu broods by a tree, lamenting how none of that mambo-jumbo works. Suddenly, he overhears Yuna's atrocious attempt to speak English to a little girl who will go home to have nightmares now. Uryu steps in and fluently tells the girl to accept the talisman, so the girls gladly grabs it and waves them goodbye. Afterward, Uryu offers to teach Yuna some better English, so she doesn't scare off the foreign tourists, but Yuna refuses to take help from him. However, she thanks him for stepping in and promises to study her English more. Suddenly, a bird swoops down and steals her red string. Yuna remembers when her mom handed them those red strings and they instantly became treasures. Now some overgrown mosquito has flown away with it. Later, Yuna looks depressed cause she hasn't found it yet, so her sisters assure her that the gods will surely help them find it later. Uryu suddenly butts in and scolds them for leaving everything to the gods. He insists that no amount of prayer would actually make their wishes come true, and they had to get at their and do it themselves. Yuna fires back and says the gods would never abandon anyone who prays to them for help. As she walks off angrily, she tells him he clearly doesn't belong here. Oryu returns to his room, thinking it's best to stay away from Yuna. However, when the girls go to check on him, they find he's no longer there. Ya immediately freaks out, and they end up wondering how they can make the two of them get along. Unfortunately, Asadi was too busy searching for any of Oryu's jizz materials to listen to Ya's worries. Suddenly, Ya notices a picture of Oryu and his mom, and Asadi reminds her of what their grandpa told them. Apparently, Oryu had lost his mom when he was young and ended up in an orphanage. They figure that he probably prayed to the gods back then, but got a divine middle finger in return. That's why he doesn't believe in the gods anymore. Asadi then assures Ya that Yuna and Oryu are more alike than they think, while Yuna eavesdrops on them. Meanwhile, Oryu searches all the birds' nests he can find for Yuna's red string. After failing, he decides to try again in the morning, but then he remembers the girls praying and decides to try it out. At the same time, Yuna searches everywhere for Oryu when she finds him praying for her to find her treasure. Yuna joins him and commends him on his prayer, so Oryu apologizes for being an asshat earlier. Yuna apologizes too, and when she sees his dirty hands, she tells him that since he has a little respect for the gods, he can live at the shrine. Just then, the girls show up, relieved to find them, though Asadi is convinced they were secretly taboo humping. They head back to the house together and agree that if a miracle happens, they'll be able to find the red string. At that moment, Oryu is shocked to see the magical star shower occur, so they all stare at it surprised. However, Oryu realizes it's just a meteor shower in cherry blossoms, falling at the exact same time. So much for miracles. The girls wonder how long the stick-up his is and ask if the sight in front of him isn't as beautiful as a miracle. Oryu finally agrees, and while they're talking, Yuna's red strings gets removed from a bird's nest and falls on top of her. The next day, the priest Chidori finally arrives, so the girls tell him everything was fine in his absence. Chidori then welcomes Oryu and explains that once he gets married, he'll take over the role of being priest. When Oryu asks what the hell is talking about, the geezer tells him he'll get to wed and bed one of his granddaughters. Oryu immediately objects and says he only planned on being a freeloader. He adds that he wants to be a doctor, not a priest, but Chidori assures him that being a priest is flexible, so he can work 2 jobs. The girls also object, but when Chidori ignores them, Oryu insists that he won't go through with it. Chidori calmly informs him that he plans to transfer him to a school that would increase his chances of getting into his dream university. Upon hearing this, Oryu begs him to forgive his insolence and asks how many grandkids he wants. Chidori laughs as he walks away, while Oryu plans to find a way to escape any pesky wedding bells. Later, the girls hold an anti-Oryu meeting led by Yuna, who thinks the old man must have dementia. The other girls agree that it would be weird to marry him out of the blue, and Yuna adds that Oryu doesn't even believe in God. They wonder what they can do, so Yuna suggests they find a way to kick him out of the house. After, the operation commences and Yuna tells Oryu he'll have to do housework instead of freeloading. His first task is cooking, so Yuna shows him a fridge emptier than Ye's brain. She figures there's no way he can whip something up with those ingredients, but she stands corrected when he presents a Gordon Ramsay special. The girls quickly stuff their faces, and even though the meal was impeccable, Yuna says he's not off the hook yet. Next up, he's forced to do the laundry. Yuna hopes he'd fold under the heat of the sun, while Ye wonders if it's a good idea to give him access to their plot covers. Surprisingly, Oryu doesn't bat an eyelid at their unmentionables, and it ends up being more of a challenge for the girls to witness. After suffering this self-inflicted embarrassment, Oryu folds the laundry into neat piles that make them look like they were brand new. However, Yuma insists that it's not over yet and is forced to whip out her secret weapon. Oryu will have to clean Ye's room. Ye's room is the spitting image of a pigsty, so Yuna wished him good luck on his mission. Oryu wondered where to start from, as his nose was getting defiled by something rotten. He discovered the source was some oil paintings, since Ye was an art major. Oryu almost lost his life in the process, but he presented a sparkling clean room in the end. Ye felt they should let him stay in the house after putting him through that, and Asadi added that they could use a handymaid too. When Oryu heard this, he thanked them for their short-lived hospitality, but if he had to do housework every day, he wouldn't be able to read for medical school. Because of this, Oryu packs his bags and leaves to achieve his dreams. The girls felt weird about his exit, but Yuma insisted that their plan must have been a great success. However, Ye and Asahi looked sad to see him go. Later on the train, Oryu was back to studying hard, while the girls were secretly stalking him. They tease Yuna for being a softie, though she denies even having a heart. They wonder why Oryu was passionately aiming to be a doctor, and thought it was probably because of his mother. The stalking continued from the station, all the way to a secluded area where the trail ended at a house haunted by crows and bad omens. Yuna worried that Yuryu was planning to live in the slums because she kicked him out, but Yuryu snuck up on them and scared the salt out of Yuna. They wonder what's up with all the kids, while the kids try to name the planets on their chests. Yuryu asked them what they were doing there, but he got interrupted by the owner of the house and a Dr. Mahiru. They head inside and Mahiru explains that she runs the orphanage called Miracle Garden. She thanks the girls for taking in a deadbeat like Yuryu and says they're too pretty to be his future wives. She assures them that Yuryu has some good qualities and teases him for aiming to be a doctor because of her. Yuryu stops her before she mentions what he does at night. Then he insists he's not returning to the shrine or marrying them. Mahiru quickly grabs his mouth and threatens him, reminding him of the strings she pulled to get him a foster home. After, the kids run up to Yuryu to show him their paper cranes, and when Yuryu looks surprised, another girl named Shireti pops out. Yuryu wonders what she's doing there, but she says she was just visiting. The girls wonder who she is, so Yuryu explains that she's a childhood friend that used to live there too. Asadi bets Yuryu is the reason she dresses like a boy, but Yuna tells her to cut it out. One of the kids shows his paper crane to the girls and says it's for his mom. So Mahiru explains that they also take care of parents whose illnesses make it difficult to care for their kids. That's why they were making paper cranes on strings to send to them. The girls think it's a great idea, but Yuryu calls it a waste of time. Yuna tells him he's wrong and tells the kids to ignore the buzzkill while they help them with their cranes. After a while, the girls present a train wreck. Ye's crane was doing way too much. Yuna was too slow with hers and Asadi was too clumsy. The kids gather round and tell Yuryu the girls were a waste of twin planets and asks for his help instead. Yuryu couldn't resist their pleas and helped them make 1,000 paper cranes. The girls marveled at how good he was, while Yuryu lamented wasting his precious time on screaming children. However, when he overheard a kid wondering if the crane would truly help his mom get better, it triggered a memory from his past. He grabbed the paper crane and handed it to the kid, assuring him that when the doctors see the charms, they'll do their best, so the boy cheered up instantly. Mahiru walked in and told the girls that Yuryu was so good at paper cranes because he folded thousands of them for his mother. Because of that, he's the one who understands the kids the most. The girls realize that Yuryu wants to be a doctor because of the kids, so Shirati adds that Yuryu has always been there for them when they're anxious or sad. At that, Mahiru calls the girls' attention and tells them to take good care of Yuryu. Later on, the girls continue to play outside with the children, while Mahiru congratulates Yuryu on bagging 3 shrine ladies. However, Yuryu laments that they wanted him to do all the chores, making it hard for him to study at all. Mahiru says Yuryu has always been able to do many things with his hands, but his mouth has had a hard time keeping up. However, she assures him that those 3 girls came all this way because they care about him, and he'd be making a mistake if he thought he wasn't welcome. She then reminds him of when he was a kid and wanted to help her with all the chores or taking care of the kids. Mahiru had told him that she was glad to do it all herself. Yuryu smiles and decides not to complain anymore, even if it means doing everything like she did. Mahiru approves and wishes him good luck. Later, the girls tease Yuryu for having a crush on Mahiru, but he tells them to shut their pie holes and explains that he owes her his life. He then apologizes for being selfish and leaving the house like that. He offers to do any housework they want him to, so Yuna tells him that they'll become lazy if they do that. So they all offer to help out since they're family now. Yuryu gladly accepts, but the girls turn out to be housework. Ye's room was back to square one in less than a day. Asahi didn't understand the concept of using a line, and Yuna could watch paint dry faster than she could cook. Yuryu realized there was no hope for the trio of airheads. Just then Chidori popped in and said he was glad Yuryu was finally acting like a successor. However, Yuryu still planned to do something about that marriage part later. Chidori then suggested that he should have a formal marriage interview with each of his granddaughter to deepen their bonds. Some days later, Chidori comes to drag Yuryu for his first marriage interview. Yuryu figures the sisters are just as uninterested as he is until he sees Asadi playing her part all too well. Chidori announces the beginning of the interview, so Asadi informs Yuryu that he'll have to spend the day with her. Chidori leaves to let the crazy kids have fun, so Asahi tells Yuryu they should enjoy the fun while it lasts. She then gets up close and starts to take off her robes, making Yuryu pretend to shield his eyes. Unfortunately, all he sees is a talking flatboard that wants to go running. Moments later, Asahi and Yuryu go running together, and she explains that running is basically like breathing to her. Yuryu doesn't take her seriously since she's the most happy-go-lucky of the sisters, so Asahi threatens to leave him behind. Yuryu smugly says there was no way she could smoke him until he ends up half-dead 5 hours later. He heads inside, hoping to take a shower, but finds the door wide open, revealing Asahi's barren chest. Asahi then teases that she prefers getting open air, but Yuryu calls her sick. The next morning, Yuryu realizes he overslept and blames Asahi for tiring him out. However, Asahi suddenly appears in his bed and tells him she'd like to continue their interview. Before she subjects him to an early morning marathon session, she wants to grab a new pair of running shoes. Yuryu calls her out on just using him, but Asahi says she's got to tell her grandpa they did the interview. Yuryu sees the storage room has been hit with the same tornado that ran through Ya's room, but Asahi is too busy fantasizing about being locked alone with the boy. The plot gods quickly pulled some strings and locked the doors so they couldn't get out. Asahi broke the news that since it's an old door, it wasn't going to budge. Yuryu tries to think up a solution when he notices Asahi begin to malfunction. Unlike her usual flirty self, he then remembers what she said in the bathroom and figures that she's scared of cramped spaces. Asahi tries to deny it, but when Yuryu sees her shaking, he places his hand on her head to calm her down. He then offers his back as protection so Asahi clings tight to him, while Yuryu tries to break through the window. Later that morning, Yuryu finally managed to make a hole big enough for him to fit through. Asahi notices his bruised hands and is moved by how brave he is till he realizes how high the room is and starts stalling. Eventually, he drags himself down and opens the door for Asahi, who has the audacity to tease him for having a phobia. As they leave, Asahi thanks him for his help, so Yuryu turns around and tells her that now that he thinks about it, she sometimes has a childish side. Asahi turns as red as your old report card and denies it, but suddenly, Ya and Asahi run up to ask where she's been all morning. Asahi tells them she had an unforgettable night with Yuryu, triggering Yuna and her salt. The next day, Yuryu prepares to face Yuna, but when he sees her fully in wifey mode, he suspects the world is ending. They take a walk together, and Yuna acts unusually gentle and sweet. Yuryu wonders who this is and what she did with Yuna, till he notices her wave off a cat. Later, Yuryu asks Yuna why she's been acting strangely. Suddenly, Yuna pushes him down and tries to come onto him, but Yuryu pushes her back, insisting that he didn't want to make crack babies. Yuna finally returns to her bossy self and explains that she's only doing this for the sake of the shrine. She then leaves to pick flowers while the other girls say that was downright hard to watch. Later, Yuryu tries to ask the girls why Yuna is doing way too much if she really hates him. That's when the girls reveal that Yuna is only trying to protect them from the grim fate of marrying Yuryu's ugly face. Apparently, she's always been like that, so Yuryu asks the girls what Yuna likes. Later, Yuryu tells Yuna to get changed so they can continue the rest of their interview. He then takes her to a cat cafe, and though she tries to deny being a closeted cat lady, she can't stop herself from making goo-goo noises at it. She suddenly suggests they leave, but when Yuryu reminds her they just arrived, she says she can't afford to be lazy. Yuryu tells her that the girls are worried that she's been overworking herself for the shrine, but Yuna insists that it's her mission. Yuryu can relate to her, but he reminds her that her sisters also matter, so she should treat her downtime as part of her mission too. Yuryu offers to forget his studies and play with cats for the rest of the day, so Yuna also lightens up and starts having fun with her kitty. Later, Yuna says she needs to take her sisters there sometime, and Yuryu agrees that it's pretty addictive. Yuna then tosses a doll to him and thanks him for getting her out of her to relax. When Yuna acts unusually sweet and calm, Yuryu asks if she has a brain parasite, making Yuna default to factory settings and toss salt at him. The next day, Yuryu waits for his last interview with Yae, but when she takes her sweet time, he barges upstairs to ask why. He accidentally walks in on her changing and nosebleeds his way out. However, when he asks what's taking so long, she assures him she'll be out in a second. A week passes and Yuryu returns, prepared to barge in on her, but he finds that she's gone already. When he asks the girls, they have no idea where she went, and when Yuna starts to panic, Yuryu tries to figure out where he could have gone. Later, Yuryu finds Yae drawing at the Inari shrine and asks her what she's doing. When Yae asks how he found her, he tells her the creepy fox drawing kind of tipped him off. He then insists on knowing the reason why she ditched the interview, so Yae asks if he really has a crush on her. When he tells her to cut it out, she says it's a secret and assures him we'll probably find out soon enough. Yae suggests they do the interview at the shrine instead, so they go around taking pictures and acting like total tourists. Once the interview is over, Yae hands him a charm to ward off evil as a token of her apology. As they walk off, Yuryu wonders if there's more to Yae than being an airhead, but then she suddenly asks who he's chosen to marry. Ya lists Yuna and Asahi's good sides, but for her, she's got something a lot more soft and bouncy to offer. Yuryu gets flustered and accidentally steps off the staircase, causing him to fall backward. His life starts to flash before his eyes until he sees memories he doesn't recognize, hinting that he'll marry all three sisters. He then wakes up and sees it was all a dream. Later, he heads to Ya's room to find out what really happened after their interview, but the idiot is of no help. Yuna shows up to nag Yuryu for bothering Yai. Then she sends him to go pick up some tea cakes for an important guest. While Yuryu's at the store, he overhears some aunties talking about the upcoming Amigami festival, but they haven't been to the shrine in a long time. When Yuryu returns to the house, he finds the important guest who advises them to put the shrine up for sale. Chidori introduces the white hair man as Moemon, who is basically the shrine's sugar daddy. Moemon explains that since the shrine isn't pulling customers like before, they'll have to stop his financial support, but he offers to let them keep the house. When their mom was still alive, she was once able to gather 1,000 people to the festival, but since she kicked the bucket, they haven't even pulled 30% of that. Suddenly, the man's face wrinkles like Sukuna's finger, as he mocks their mother for working herself to death. Yuna almost burst a blood vessel in anger, but her sisters manage to calm her down. Yuryu quickly interrupts the cruel man and tries to cut a deal in exchange for pulling 5,000 visitors to the festival. When the man warns him that his dreams are childish, Asahi comes to his defense and says they're no longer kids. Yae politely asks the bitter old man to give them more time, so they all vow to appease him. Moemon agrees to the deal, but he refuses to give them money for the festival, and adds that if they fail to pull 5,000 people, they'll have to give up the house too. After hearing this, Yuryu is surprised to hear the girls agree to the terms with Chidori in full support. Before leaving, Moemon shows them his severe pink eye condition and warns them not to regret their decision. Afterward, Yuna scolds Yuryu for provoking the devil's younger brother, so the girls try and think up a plan to pull it off when they notice Yuryu's gone. They find him weeding through the previous festival registers and agree that they might be able to pull it off with his help. The next day, Yuryu looks like he's one eye bag away from becoming a zombie when he informs the girls of a drop-in stalls at the festival. The girls explain that since their mom died, they became estranged from the stall owners and Chidori was too busy taking care of them to keep up. However, the girls insist that they're old enough to run the festival by themselves now. Yuryu suggests resorting to Plan B, which is to use social media to get people's attention, so Yuna assures him that they're masters of the internet. Their first poster turned out horrible, so Yuryu suggests using them as the campaign girls. Asahi mocks him for thinking they're cute, but Yuryu is not ashamed to admit that he does. Yuna objects to doing such a vulgar thing as a shrine maiden, so Asahi volunteers to do the work, since she's the cutest sister. Unfortunately, she was only cute enough to garner one like, which was probably sent by her mother's ghost. Since that didn't work, they tried a strained picture of Yuna, but only 2 people gave a shit. Frustrated, Asahi turned to Yai's outrageous cup size to do the trick, but it got 0 likes and Yuryu now had to bleach his eyes. Yuryu points out that she's barely advertising the shrine or the festival, so Asahi plans to try lewd photos in their maiden uniforms. At this, Yuna shows up and calls her a failure as a shrine maiden for disrespecting God. Asahi fires back and insists that Yuna is the real failure for thinking God was the only important thing to consider. As the girls face off, Yae appears and warns them to behave so they don't get on her bad side. However, at the dinner, the girls don't say a word to each other, which bothers Yuryu. Later, Yuryu finds Yuna practicing her selfie poses when he asks if she's made up with Asahi. He then shows Yuna just how hard Asahi has been working and asks if she still thinks she's a failure. At this, Yuna texts Asahi a selfie of her to ask for pointers. While Asahi responds to her excitedly, Yuna hugs her from behind and apologizes for being a tsundere. The girls finally make up, so Yae runs in to join the mushy moment, and while the girls are messing around, Yuryu takes a picture which ends up going viral. After, they continued to make TikTok content of the shrine that did just as well. Because of this, Yuryu suggested they move on to Phase 2, which was making limited items for sale. Yadi was put in charge of designing the talismans, but 2 days later, Yuryu almost ran mad from asking her for the designs. The airhead had been procrastinating the whole time, but she assured him she'd get it to him the next morning. Yuryu later realized they were in trouble because everything from Ya's mouth was a lie. When he checked the room for her, she was already gone. Meanwhile, Yae was by the river watching some koi fish K-drama. When she saw the fish in love, It finally gave her inspiration for her own design. The next morning, Uryu showed the girls his replacement talisman designs, but they told him to stick to studying medicine at all costs. Just then, Yae wandered in with the new design, which everyone immediately praised for her genius. Yae explained the design of love was so they could reel in the young and desperately single. Uryu scolds Yae for being lenient with her pace and promises to keep an eye on her next time, but the girls call him creepy for wanting to stalk an older woman. However, Yae feels grateful that he'd go that far for her. Now with their social media success and the new talisman designs, the girls are excited for the festival. But Uryu tells them they have one more important thing to do. Later, they head toward the town's shopping district, and the girls lament how nervous they are. They eventually meet with the stall owners from before, and Uryu asks for their help to make the festival a success. After explaining that the shrine was in financial trouble, Uryu and the girls vowed to ask for their help. To their surprise, the stall owners were more than happy to help. The girls hoped they were not imposing, but they explained that they had already been discussing the festival anyway. The stall owners admit that ever since the previous owner died, they had been reluctant to go there, but they never thought the shrine would be struggling. Their families had been helped by the Amigamis for generations, so they were glad to help them protect it. Uryu and the girls thanked them for their help. Then the stall owners suggested they hold a strategy meeting immediately. Later, as the girls watched Uryu with the stall owners, they were reminded of their mother. They admit that they've learned so much thanks to Uryu, and believe they can finally make the festival a success. The day of the festival arrives, so Uryu and the girls get ready to gather those visitors and save the shrine. However, when hours pass and they've had more tumbleweed than visitors, they figure something must be wrong. At that moment, Asahi runs up with a phone and shows them a fake account, claiming the festival has been cancelled. Yae suggests warning the people about the fake news, but their account was already blocked since they looked like imposters. At the same moment, the Japanese Voldemort rejoiced in the success of his plan to teach the Amigami girls a lesson. Back at the shrine, Uryu and Asahi curse Moemon for doing this, since no one else would be sick enough to try it. Yuna reminds them of all the effort they put in for the festival, which was going to get ruined by a man whose eyes looks like toenail clippings. Yae and Asahi feel just as bad as Yuna, but Uryu assures them it's not over yet. After looking at the festival schedule, Uryu suggests they focus on the afternoon events to draw visitors' attention. He tells the girls a plan to attract sweaty dudes in New Balance sneakers, and the girls freak out and warn him they might get in trouble. However, Chidori overhears and insists that it's a good idea. The stall owners also say they're ready to help, so Uryu grabs some flyers to pass around and leaves the rest to the girls. As the girls watch and run off, Asahi asks if God will scold them, but Chidori tells them the most important thing is to have fun with God. The stall owners agree to have fun too and share in the girls' happiness. Meanwhile, Ryu tries to pass out flyers for the festival, but something about a man in a bathrobe just doesn't get people to respond. Just then, Maharu shows up to help and show him how it's done. Shirahi and the kids also show up to help, so Uryu asks what they're all doing there. Maharu says they heard they were in trouble and figured Uryu would be trying to solve it alone. They tell Uryu to lighten up and agree to stay and help. With this, they're finally able to pass out the flyers just in time for the main attraction. Yuna and the girls show up on a parade float to show off girls in bathrobes instead. When the crowd sees how cute the shrine maidens are, they decide to stop by the festival. Moemon watches this happen and laments his plan going sour. Meanwhile, the girls lament how much Uryu disrespects God, but since they're already up there, they decide to have fun with it. The crowd is drawn to the girls, making Uryu think they can finally hit 5,000 visitors. However, it starts to rain and everyone runs for shelter. Because of this, the festival is left emptier than Ye's brain, and the radio broadcast says the storm is likely to continue for a long time. Uryu looks defeated as he stares at their visitor counter. He decides to head out in the rain, despite the girls warning him about catching a cold. But despite their luck, the girls assure Uryu that God would never turn his back on them and would surely lend a helping hand. At this, they run to the prayer stand and beg God to help them with the festival. Uryu watches the girls pray aimlessly in the rain and takes off running. Uryu feels frustrated by how powerless he feels and wonders what he can possibly do to change things. Just then, the storm comes to an end, and Uryu notices something incredible. The girls catch up to him to make sure he's okay, so Uryu points out a scene from a Disney fairy tale, making Uryu think it really might be a miracle. Moments later, the girls put on a shrine performance in the middle of the cherry blossom trees. The crowd watches as they wave their fans around in perfect unison. and one lady even shares the moment on her TikTok live. After shaking their bells a little longer, the performance finally ends with a bow. The crowd cheers as the leaves continue to fall, adding to the attraction. Yuna is grateful for the miracle when she sees the huge turnout, and Asahi points out how this really turned into a lake of love. As the people continue to watch, Asahi says it reminds her of the days their mom was around. At this, the girls are encouraged to do even better as shrine maidens, so Yuna suggests they bring more people to the shrine and to God. Thanks to this, a ton of people visit the festival, and Ye's designs are an instant hit. Yuryu mans the store as a one-man army, so Mahiru shows up to help him again, causing Yuryu to thank her for the help. Mahiru says she's always wanted to cosplay as a shrine maiden anyway, but she's mostly glad many people were able to visit the festival. When she points out how hard it is to live in a shrine, Ryu laments how the girls keep pushing him around, and he's barely getting any study time. There's still the issue of marrying one of them, which is enough to drive him crazy, and not the good kind. However, Mahiru points out how much trouble he goes through to help them, so Yuryu says he only felt no one should go unrewarded after so much hard work. Another customer comes up, and as Yuryu attends to her, Mahiru sees that he's actually enjoying himself. After sunset, the group notices they're one person short, and there's only 5 minutes left. Unfortunately, there are no more visitors left, so Mo and Mon shows up to brag that they're out of time. However, to their surprise, Mo and Mon tells them they passed, and that he'll continue to support them. They inform him that they're one visitor short, so he tells them to add him to the list. He counts on them to bring more visitors from then on and leaves. While they drive off, Mo and Mon brags they won't get cheeky again if they owe him a favor. Back at the shrine, Hiryu is relieved to have the shrine saved, while Asahi can't believe they actually pulled 5,000 visitors. She sheds a tear of joy that they can continue living there, causing Yuna to hug her, and admit she can't believe it either. Yet he agrees and says it was all thanks to Yuryu. To express her gratitude, she kisses him on the cheek, causing his brain to short-circuit. When he starts to nosebleed, Yuna senses his dirty thoughts and prepares the salt while Chidori watches them proudly. The next day, Yuryu tries to study when he remembers the kiss from Ye and slams his head into the table to exorcise his crotch demon. After agonizing over it, Yuryu wonders if Ye might actually like him. Asahi shows up and says he's overthinking it and will end up distracted from his studies. Yuryu admits it, so Asahi offers to find out Ye's true feelings for him. That afternoon, Asahi asks Ye what she thinks of Yuryu, and when she tells him he's a good guy, Asahi tells Yuryu that's girl code for he doesn't matter. Yuryu tries to accept his L gracefully when Asahi admits that even they don't know what planet Ye is on half of the time. She decides the only way to pull out her true feelings is to back her into a corner by forcing her to go running. Ye lags behind thanks to the anchors on her chest, and Yuryu wonders if this is actually a trap. Once Ye is exhausted, Asahi asks what she thinks of Yuryu again, but Ye says she only cares about going home and taking a bath. When they return home, Asahi and Ye soak off together, and Ye asks why Asahi invited her on the run. Asahi gets embarrassed as she asks why Ye kissed Yuryu. She explains that even though Yuryu is good-looking if you close both eyes, he's just a rando who is being forced to marry one of them. Asahi asks if Ye has actually come to like him, but Ye playfully says she's not telling, shocking Asahi. After, Asahi reports her failure to Yuri, who says it was probably a dumb idea to involve someone who's younger anyway. Asahi gets upset, so when Yuryu tries to pat her head in appreciation, she blocks it and tells him she doesn't like being treated like a child. Yuryu apologizes and says she reminded him of the orphanage kid, so Asahi decides to show him she's not so innocent. She climbs on top of him and nibbles on his ear. When he asks why, she says she's not telling and runs out of the room, leaving him with a developing brain tumor. The next day, Yuryu struggles to brush his teeth thanks to the lustful thoughts of tag-teaming the sisters. Yuryu prays Yuna would at least be saner when he stumbles into her acting strange. Yuna insists she's not hiding anything when Ye shows up and asks what's wrong. Yuryu says Yuna's hiding something, so Asahi advises her to talk to Yuryu about it. But Yuna says he might leak the information. That night, Yuryu manages to complete his study session without a hitch, so he wonders if the girls have been abducted by aliens. He rushes out to check when he finds Asahi crouching outside Yuna's room. She tells him to keep it down and watch something interesting, so they witness Yuna hard at work to make a talisman. Asahi explains that her birthday is the next day, so Yuryu figures the girls were hiding their presents for her earlier. Asahi says Yuna sucks at keeping secrets, so they go over to Ye's room and find her sewing stuffed animals for demons to possess later. By midnight, Ye tells Yuna her present is cute, but Asahi would definitely like hers better. However, Yuna scoffs and insists her present was better. The girls begin to argue while Yuryu watches. He asks Asahi if she even cares about either gift, but she just smiles to herself. Suddenly, Ye and Yuna trip and ruin both of their gifts, so Yuryu prepares to go in and scold them when Asahi stops him and tells him to watch. Asahi asks the girls what they're up to, so they wish her a happy birthday and apologize for screwing up her presents since they're such klutzes. However, Asahi appreciates Yuna for focusing hard on making one thing, while Ye made so many things for her. She says she loves them both and thanks them, so they all share a wholesome hug. When Yuryu comes closer, Asahi says the only thing that matters is all the effort they made for her sake. She then asks Yuryu what he has to say, so he shyly wishes her a happy birthday while the girls head back to bed. Later that morning, Yuna and Ye wake up, wishing they could have given Asahi their gifts. They suddenly spot Asahi, who says she's got something interesting to see, so they enter the living room to find the broken presents back to normal. Beside them, Yuryu is fast asleep as he holds a book about hand-sewn accessories. The girls think it was sweet of him, and Asahi finds a note wishing her a happy birthday. Later, Yuryu has a dream where Yuna tells him she wants to express her gratitude and plants a kiss on him. Yuryu wakes up and wonders what that was about while the talisman from Ye lies nearby. He then gets a text from Mahiro asking if he's free. Later, Asahi and Ye show up in Yuryu's room with their requests when they notice he isn't in there. Yuna tells them he was called by Mahiro, so the girls say they'll simply wait for him to return. Yuna worries that they're relying too much on him and brings up Ye's surprise kiss. Yuna hopes Asahi hasn't done anything R-rated either, but Asahi's red face gives it away. Yuna proceeds to scold the girls, warning that they could ruin their reverence as shrine maidens. However, the girls tell her she's too cold toward him and ought to show some gratitude for everything he does for them. Meanwhile, Mahiro hands Yuryu a new uniform for school, so he asks why she called him over instead of delivering it. Mahiro admits that she wanted to see his face, making Yuryu flustered. She then asks how life with the Shrine Maidens has been, and Yuryu says it's been hell. Yuna is diligent but stubborn, while Ye is an airhead who only works at her own pace. As for Asahi, she's bad at detailed work too, so he ends up doing everything for the girls. Mahiro points out that he seems to be getting a kick out of doing all their work for them. She tells him that it's both his bad side and his good side, but he needs to focus on getting into medical school. After, Yuryu walks home with a new determination to become a doctor and repay Mahiro for everything she's done. On the way, he notices Yuna waiting for him and asks what she wants, so she says she just wants to talk to him. They take a walk together and the awkward silence kicks in. Suddenly, Yuna asks for his shoulders and begins to rub them so he feels better, but Yuryu wonders what's gotten into her. She notices his shoelace is undone and bends down to fix it, but when he sees the free access to her milk jugs, he insists on tying his shoe himself. Yuryu asks what's up with her, so Yuna says she's just trying to express her gratitude. At that moment, Yuryu remembers his dream and realizes everything is happening exactly like the dream. As Yuna keeps talking, Yuryu wonders if the dream was prophetic, which means she tried to kiss him. However, Yuna only thanks Yuryu, which leaves him relieved, until a girl mistakenly pushes Yuna toward him, just like in the dream. But this time, Yuryu stops her by putting his hand in the way. Then he scoots back and realizes the dream was right. Yuna grabs her salt bag and tosses salt in the air, then she tells him they should get going. Yuna wonders what Asahi's so conscious about, so he snaps back to normal and walks off. However, Yuna replays the moment they almost kissed and throws some more salt on herself to purify the filth in her heart. That night, Yuryu has a dream that the girls head to a new shrine in Arashiyama. There, Yuna turns into an airhead. Ye has a shocked expression on her face, and Asahi looks like she's passed out. The last thing he sees is all the girls sleeping with him before he wakes up. Later at breakfast, Yuna suggests they go to Tsukigami. When Yuryu asks what that is, Asahi says it's a shrine in Arashiyama, making Yuryu nervous. The master of the shrine taught the girls how to be shrine maidens, and now that they've been getting more visitors than usual, they'll need her help again. Yuryu is still recovering from the shock when Asahi asks if he'd like to come too. However, Yuryu absolutely refuses. He returns to his room and plans to stop his dream from coming true at all costs. Suddenly, Chidori comes in and tells Uryu he has an important item for him to deliver. Moments later, Uryu races down the street carrying a mystery box. When he arrives at the shrine, he realizes the future won't be so easy to change. Later, Uryu barges in with the item from Chidori and reveals that it's apparently carrying something evil. The girls wonder if an evil spirit has been sealed inside, so Yomiko tells everyone to calm down and first introduces herself to Uryu as the assistant priest. Uryu asks what an assistant priest is, so Asahi explains that it's a rank in priesthood, which makes Yomiko the master of shrine maidens. Uryu then asks what they should do with the box, so Yomiko tells him to leave it to her. She begins to give off superhero aura, which she uses to open the box, but it turns out it just contains cinnamon mochi.
What?
Causing Uryu to silently curse the sneaky old priest. Yomiko places it on the table for everyone to enjoy while Uryu continues to watch her closely. While they eat, Yomiko explains that the Tsukigami shrine was dedicated to the moon god, who leads people out of their worries into light and hope. Yuna adds that Tsukigami could even make their dreams come true, but that part is more like a fairy tale. Legend has it that on the night of the full moon, if you walk over the illuminated rainbow, your dreams will come true. After this, the girls tell Yomiko how they've been getting more visitors at the shrine and struggling to keep up, so they need her advice. Yomiko says she understands and starts addressing each of the girls. She tells Asahi she's become much prettier since she last saw her. She tells Yuna to stop calling her master since it's not cute, and then she grabs Yae's melons to see if they have any juice, making Uryu wonder if she's right in the head. After, she announces she booked a hot spring inn for everyone, so the girls all get excited at the prospect of soaking their problems away. As they head to the inn, Uryu says he has to leave and return to his studies. Suddenly, he notices a group of shrine maidens lined up, so Yomiko explains that it's routine for them to offer gratitude to the gods every day. Yuna is impressed by Yomiko's skill in overseeing so many maidens, and even Uryu has to admit he misjudged her. Asahi assures the girls their shrine would be just as great someday, so Yomiko rewards her with more head pats and lack of personal space. The other girls join in and Uryu watches them bond with Yomiko. Before Yomiko can send them off to the inn, Uryu asks Yomiko why she dodged the girls' questions at lunch. Yomiko commends Uryu on being observant, but she says she's not inclined to give them advice because it's just too much for them to handle. When the girls try to object, Yomiko asks if they're really ready to devote themselves to the shrine. She points out how Asahi and Yuna were approaching their entrance exam years, while Yae needs to start thinking of a career path after university. She reminds them that they only live once and advises them to figure out what their dreams really are. At this, Yuna insists that she's ready to devote her life to her family, the shrine's visitors, and God, begging Yomiko for help. However, Yomiko tells her that a sense of responsibility just simply wasn't enough. Asahi tries to assure Yomiko that they're proper shrine maidens now, so Yomiko tells her they shouldn't need her help if that's the case. Yae can't even think of anything to say. Yomiko tries to leave once again when Ryu tells her she's being unnecessarily cold to the girls. He scolds her for not understanding how much the girls care about the shrine when she's known them for longer than he has. At this, Yomiko reminds Ryu that he'd also have to marry into the family for the shrine to survive, so she asks him if he's really thought it through. Now, even Ryu is stunned speechless. Yomiko tells the group to reevaluate their plans for their future and let them know by the next day. Later, Ryu and the girls collectively sulk at the shrine's entrance. Yuna pulls her usual disappearing act and walks off alone. Then Ryu says he has to go too, so he can study. He reveals that he has zero intention of taking over their shrine and begins to walk off when Yuna suddenly collapses. Ryu tries to ask what's wrong when he sees the airhead face just like he saw in his dream. Meanwhile, Yomiko tells a mystery caller that Ryu is just like they described and promises to determine which of the girls can take on the duties of the shrine. Back at the entrance, Asahi figures that Yuna is in a funk since she got scolded. Ryu suggests Yae would be the best to talk to her, but the second airhead already escaped to God knows where. At this, Asahi switches to marathon mode to search for Yae, but when Ryu reminds her about Yuna, she says she just needs some time to herself, and the third airhead takes off. Ryu asks Yuna if she's okay, but she begins to repeat catchphrases like a broken Barbie doll. She eventually snaps out of it and tells Ryu not to worry. Later, Ryu offers her some sweet red bean soup, but Yuna lets it slip and fall, which triggers her depression again. Ryu tries to cheer her up by reminding her how much she wants to be a shrine maiden, but Yuna confesses that she's only doing what's expected of her and what she wants doesn't matter. At this, Ryu goes to get another can of bean soup when he notices Yomiko stalking Yuna. She quickly hides from him and tries to play it cool by claiming she was on a walk. But when Iryu returns to the bench, Yuna is gone. He begins to search all over the shrine for her till he finds her at the edge of the waterfall with that daft expression again. He realizes she's planning to do waterfall training and reminds her that she'll get her clothes soaked. At this, Yuna removes her pants and tries to proceed, so Iryu grabs her to prevent her from going in. Yuna begs him to let her go, but they continue to struggle till Iryu accidentally squeezes her stress ball. Yuna immediately freaks out and gives him hell for it. Later, Iryu apologizes but insists he was only trying to help. Yuna then scolds him for saying he had no intention of marrying their family, but still continuing to help around, while neglecting his studies. Iryu also gets mad and tells her that he doesn't care if he helps others to make himself feel good, because that's what he wants to do. This catches Yuna off guard, and she breaks into laughter at how pathetic Iryu sounded. She then remembers her time with Yamiko and realizes she doesn't need to be depressed anymore, all thanks to Iryu. Later, Asahi returns from her run and is glad to see Yuna out of the dumps. Iryu asks if she forgot to look for Yae, so Asahi teases him for being in love with Yae. When Iryu tries to object, Yuna reminds him of Yae's giant cup sizes, which proves that she's an adult. That evening, Iryu tracks Yae down to the river thanks to the dream he had before. Yeti asks why he was looking for her, so he says being alone at night can be dangerous for a girl. Yati is touched by this, so Iryu gets embarrassed and tries to focus on his studies. Yad then moves closer and points out that he's gotten one of the questions wrong. Iryu watches her do mental maths and realizes she's actually right. He wonders how she can be a gifted kid and an airhead all at once, but Yeti simply says she was taught many things when she was young. Iryu asks what else she's good at, and Ya lists everything from flower arrangements to martial arts. When Iryu points out how many options she could choose for her future, Ye wonders if she would go on to become a designer, mathematician, or a broke housewife to a blonde shrine owner. After teasing Iryu, Ye suggests they head back when a strong wind blows them into the river, causing Ye's buns to drown Iryu. Once they get out, Yeti sees Iryu is bound to develop a cold if he goes home wet. Moments later, Iryu is soaking in the hot springs, wondering how his dream keeps coming true. Meanwhile, Yuna laments having Iryu stay in their room, but Ye says there was no helping it. Yuna asks if anything happened between Yak and Iryu, but when Yeti returns the question, Yuna remembers the little stress ball incident and quickly exits the room. After she leaves, Asahi suggests Yoi shares a bath with Iryu as an apology, so Yati calls out to Iryu that she's about to come in. Iryu pictures Yak in unholy positions inside the tub with him and starts to bleed his purity away. He looks for a place to hide, but by the time Ye comes in, he's only able to grab a potted plant nearby. Ye realizes what Iryu must have thought and calls him a perv for imagining her without clothes. Afterward, Iryu tries to finish up on his reading while Iryu stares into the vending machine nearby. 30 minutes pass and Iryu is finally done with reading while Ye's still on the same spot. When he asks why she's still there, she explains she's having trouble deciding on which drink to buy since she doesn't know what she wants. This triggers a memory from her past where a woman told her she didn't need to make any decisions since her life had been decided for her. This paralyzes Yake from making a decision till Iryu picks a random one and hands it to her. He figures she's been hiding her confusion and anxiety all this time and offers to guide her whenever she's lost. When he turns to leave, Nei thinks of how sweet he's being and tosses the drink down his kimono. When Iryu asks what that was for, she says she'll decide for herself, reminding him he's her younger brother. When it's time for bed, Asahi gets sus and invites Iryu to bed with her, causing Yuna to scold her, refusing to sleep in the same room with Iryu. Iryu offers to sleep in the drawer, so Asahi suggests none of them sleep at all. Yuna reminds them about their conversation with Yamiko the next day, so Ryu asks what their dreams are anyway. The girls get nervous, but he reminds them that he's technically family now and should get to know. Asahi suggests they might as well strip themselves bare, so Ryu tells her to get some help. Yae then suggests a pillow fight and hits Yuna with one, unleashing the beast. Later, Ryu wakes up and finds both Yak and Yuna on him, guessing they must have passed out from exhaustion. He then steps out to look for Asahi, who's busy staring at her phone. When he asks what she's up to, she accidentally drops it, causing Ryu to pick it up. Ryu then sees a mail that Asahi's been scouted from a Tokyo school for relay races. Asahi admits she was actually scouted last year, and she plans on moving to Tokyo next year. Ryu asks if she's told her family she's leaving the shrine, so she says her grandpa knows what the girls don't. She doesn't want the girls to worry about her, so she tells Ryu to keep it a secret. Ryu asks if she's worried her sisters wouldn't support her, but it's actually the opposite. She knows they will, so she doesn't want to talk to them. Ryu calls bullshit on the little dumb and tries to drag her to the girls when they trip and he lands on top of her. Asadi quickly takes some pictures and promises to leak them unless he keeps her secret. However, Ryu nobly refuses while he nosebleeds at the sight of Asadi's plaid version of cleavage. Just then, Yag and Yuna emerge from the room, causing Asadi to run away. Yuna asks Ryu what he did to her, so he comes clean about the sneak peek he just had. Ye baptizes him with salt, and then he tells them about Asadi's plan to leave for Tokyo next year. However, the girls already knew about it. Later, the girls explain that they don't like to meddle in each other's business, and even though Asahi has always been kind of a klutz, she's always been strong and persistent. Ryu asks what if she doesn't actually want that path, so the girls plan to ask her how she feels. They realize how lonely it would be without her, so Ryu suggests there's only one thing left to do. Moments later, Asahi runs through the forest wondering if she's doomed to repeat her past. She insists that she just wants to be an adult, so Ryu shows up and tells her to be honest with the girls. Yat and Yuna catch up, and Ryu apologizes for not keeping her secret. He remembers his past and tells her it would be sad if she left without saying goodbye. The girls tell Asadi they'll be rooting for her whatever she decides, so Asadi figures she just has to meet their expectations. However, the girls retire her ribbon and remind her that the bonds their mother has tied won't be loosened even by distance. This touches Asadi, and she changes her mind about Tokyo and explains that she wants all three of them to be together. The girls hug it out while Ryu watches, and then Asahi realizes how exhausted she actually is. Moments later, she wakes up on Ryu's back, who tells her she fell asleep. Asadi calls him out on knowing how she felt the whole time and teases him for being a good Samaritan. She then hugs him tight and says she's feeling much better now. Later, Ryu opens his eyes and finds the girls looking unusually mature. The girls say they haven't changed even though they're all adults now. Then they remind him of the promised day. When he asks what that is, they remind him of his promise to pass the doctor and priest qualifications so he can marry them. Just then, Ryu wakes up for real this time and finds the girls back to normal, relieved that it was all a dream. Meanwhile, Mahiru meets with Yomiko and thanks her for the advice on where Ryu should stay. Yomiko confirms that Chidori was looking to pimp his granddaughters, so it all worked out in the end. Mahiru laments the girls being too cute for Ryu, causing Yomiko to say she's acting like his mom. Mahiru says the same for Yomiko, then asks what her story is. 6 years earlier, Yomiko went to the Amigami shrine to pay her respects after the girls lost their mom. After, she asked Chidori what the future of the shrine would be, but he wasn't sure what to do either. Suddenly, Yuna and the girls bust out from behind the walls and beg Yomiko to make them her disciples, which catches her off guard. Not long after, the girls were struggling to learn their maiden duties and Yomiko was contemplating running off with a cool youth pastor to escape. However, she settled for bending the girls over at 90 degrees to help them show the best form of respect to others. Afterward, the girls moved on to flipping leaves, but Asahi was especially bad at it. Yomiko scolded her for being more like a weed dealer than a shrine maiden, which made Asahi really sad. Later, Yomiko wondered how she could possibly train 3 little girls when she overheard Asahi promising to work harder. The other 2 agreed to do their best to make their mom proud, and Yomiko was glad to hear their plans to practice on their own. From that on, the girls began to improve in their training, but Yomiko wondered if they were truly happy just following in their mom's footsteps. For Yomiko, it felt like their fun days went by in an instant, and after years of training, the girls tearfully had to say goodbye. Yomiko reminded them that they were still novices and could call her for assistance anytime. But this made the girls happy as they realized how much she sounded like their mother. In the present, Mahiru is amused to hear of Yomiko training the girls. At the same moment, Ryu finishes hearing the story of the girl's story. Then they explain how lonely they felt when they realized they wouldn't get to see her so often anytime. They realize how much time they would like to spend with Yomiko, but lament how busy she is. Meanwhile, Mahiru asks Yomiko what exactly the problem with the girls is, so Yomiko explains that Chidori tasked her with choosing a successor for the shrine. However, she doesn't think any of them should feel the pressure to do it, and should follow their dreams instead. She then wonders if it's out of place to feel that way, since she isn't even their family. At that moment, Mahiru and Ryu both advise Yomiko and the girls, as they remember their time together too. They insist that even if they're not related by blood, they can still become family. After this, the girls cheer up. That night, the girls agree to meet Yomiko on the bridge while Ryu follows along. He realizes things have been going exactly like his dream and plans to go straight home after saying hello to Yomiko. Yomiko meets with the girls and tells them the moon seems to hold some blessings that night. She then asks the girls what their future dreams are. Ryu realizes that Yea is as lightheaded as always. Yuna is just forcing herself and Asahi has given up her dream to go to Tokyo. This makes him nervous about what they will choose until all three sisters insist that they want to succeed the shrine. When the girls realize they all have the same thought, they begin to argue among themselves. Asahi assures them that being with her sisters is more important than her running, and she's most qualified as head of publicity. At this, Yae insists that she has to make the shrine's talismans and gifts, which means she'll be better at it. However, Yuna refuses to leave it to them since it's what she wants to do too. Yuryu watches in surprise as he realizes all three girls really share one brain cell. Yomiko then asks if that's their final answer, and the girls are confident in their choice. They all remember the image of their mom as a shrine maiden and insist on cherishing their home. Just then, the girls perform the angle 90 position to ask Yomiko for her help, making Yomiko almost wet in her eyes. At that moment, Yuryu asks if it's really wise to leave the Amigami shrine in the hands of three clumsy girls. The girls are outraged until Yuryu asks Yomiko to look after them better. Yomiko agrees and tells the girls their answers are actually trash. She points out that they had zero plans for actually running the shrine and relied on feelings alone. At this, she concludes it's too early to choose a shrine successor, so she'll take more time retraining them instead. The girls can't believe it, but Yomiko reminds them that they can always call on her if they find themselves in trouble. The girls then ask if they can see her even if there's nothing, and Yomiko tells them they're more than welcome. After they finish rejoicing, Yomiko asks if they're willing to marry Yuryu if they really want to succeed the shrine. At this, they all turn to Yuryu, who remembers Yomiko's warning about the shrine's survival hanging on him. As Yomiko waits for his response, she remembers Mahiru assuring her that Yuryu would give a not-so-bad answer. Yuryu sees the girl's determination and decides he has to try his best too. He pulls out his phone and shows the girls pictures of the boys from the orphanage. Even though the boys are still unripe, Yuryu says they're the best he can offer as a replacement for a husband. Yomiko remembers Mahiru's words about Yuryu finding it hard to get close to anyone after his mom died. However, after overcoming this challenge, he becomes the most dependable ally. At that moment, Yuryu promises to support the girls' dreams in any way he can, and Yomiko finally understands what Mahiru meant. The girls continue to discuss their husband candidates as they pick which boy they would prefer. Suddenly, Yae says she'd prefer Yuryu, shocking the others. Asahi shyly agrees, followed by Yuna, who pretends like she'd only be doing it for the sake of the shrine. Since none of the girls can agree, Asahi suggests they all marry him. Suddenly, bright lights surround the bridge, causing the girls to stumble into Yuryu. Yuryu then remembers the legend about the full moon making dreams come true as he realizes the girls are all lying on him. Even the girls begin to worry that Asahi's suggestion might end up coming true now. As the girls bicker between themselves, Yomiko can't wait to see what path they all choose as she leaves the girls in Yuryu's care. Some days later, Yuryu nervously arranges breakfast for the girls when they show up in their schoolgirl uniforms. They all sit to eat, and the girls lament that spring break is already over. He asks Yuryu why he hasn't taken a bite of his breakfast, but Yuryu can't let them know schoolgirl pics or his last browser search. Asahi asks what school Yuryu's transferring to, but he can't remember the name. However, Yuna assures him it can't be her since her school is an all-girls school. Yuryu was relieved that this wasn't some cliché harem anime he was starring in until Yae reminded Yuna that her school was starting co-ed this year. Later, Yuryu and Yuna discover that this is a cliché anime after all, as he's introduced as the only boy in the school. During their class break, some girls gather around Yuryu and ask him questions about himself. Yuryu struggles with the awkwardness when he notices Yuna giving him the death stare. They meet outside and Yuna tells Yuryu that he can swipe as many V cards as he likes as long as he doesn't let it slip that they live together. Yuryu doesn't understand why they need to keep it secret, but Yuna insists she doesn't want any weird rumors going around. Later in class, Yuryu decides to focus on studying and realizes how top-notch the school actually is. However, as he tries to focus, all the girls stare at him like a shitless Henry Cavill picture. During the next break, a girl named Mitsuko walks up with Yuna and introduces herself as the class rep, which means it's her duty to look out for him. She tries to find out how he's doing as the only boy in class when Yuna suddenly excuses herself. Mitsuko thinks it's strange since Yuna is usually the type to help out. Yuryu asks if they're close, so Mitsuko says they're best friends and teases Yuryu for having a crush on Yuna already. Mitsuko starts wingmaning hard as she describes all of Yuna's positive qualities, except the occasional airhead tendencies. Mitsuko also mentions how popular she's gotten thanks to the Amigami festival they held recently. At this, Ryu figures Yuna is on her best behavior at school, since there are two troublemakers at home. Mitsuko continues to tease Ryu, but warns that he'd have to go through her to win Yuna's heart. Fed up, Ryu excuses himself for the bathroom. When he returns for their gym period, he finds all the girls stripping in the classroom, although he's already seen everything Yuna has to offer. Ryu panics and closes the door, but he worries that everyone will hate him for peeking. Just then, Mitsuko and Yuna step out and Mitsuko tells Ryu it's fine to go in now. Ryu is relieved none of the girls seem to care, except Yuna, who's fighting the urge to bury him in salt. Ryu can sense that his life in school is about to be hell. The next morning, Ryu packs up lunch for the girls. When they come down to greet him, Yuna continues to give him the stink eye, making Ryu nervous. However, when the girls ask what's up with them, Yuna says it's nothing. Suddenly, the girls notice the boxed lunches Ryu packed for them, and even Yuna's stone-cold heart is melted by the sight of food. Ryu wonders what the big deal is, so the girls explain that they haven't had boxed lunches in ages and have been surviving on store-bought food. Asahi says their mom used to make it for them, so Ryu offers to keep making them every day. Later, Ryu walks to the entrance of the school as the only trouser in a sea full of skirts. Mitsuko calls out to him to ask how he's adjusting to school life, while Yuna's eyes scream, "Talk to me and you die." Mitsuko notices the weird air between them as Yuna walks ahead. She then tells Ryu that Yuna didn't buy dumplings at her parents' store like she usually does. Mitsuko asks if Ryu knows anything, but Ryu plays dumb and gets her off his case. Later during lunchtime, Yuna reveals her master chef lunchbox, and all the girls drool over how tasty it looks. Suddenly, Mitsuko points out that it's the same as Ryu's lunch, causing them to panic. Yuna freezes like a deer in headlights and fails to think up a good explanation. However, Ryu manages to stuff his entire lunch in his mouth, so the girls have nothing to compare with anymore. Yuna sighs in relief, but Mitsuko still thinks something fishy is going on. That night, Ryu washes the lunchboxes when Yuna shows up. Ryu apologizes and suggests canceling the packed lunches, but Yuna actually thanks him for it and asks if he could keep making them with a few modifications. Ryu agrees, so Yaya and Asahi show up to ask for changes too. The next day, Ryu returns from school relieved that the lunchbox problem has been solved. On the way, he spots the girls hanging out and is surprised that they go home together even though they go to different schools. However, Ryu figures he should respect Yuna's wishes and not talk to them near school. Suddenly, Shirai shows up and asks why he's always frowning. When she notices his new uniform, he informs her that he's started in a new school, causing her to tease him about how cute he looks. Shirai asks how he's settling in his new home, surprised that he's now old enough to leave the orphanage. Ryu remembers Shirai left 5 years ago and asks how it's going. Shirai says her new parents are really nice. Then she points out how much Ryu has changed. Ryu says she's changed too, so Shirai asks how exactly she's changed. However, when he realizes she's as flat as a ruler, he changes his mind. Shirai teases him for getting to live with 3 beautiful shrine maidens, but Ryu goes on his routine rant about how annoying the girls are. Shirai is surprised to hear that, so she tries to ask Ryu on a study date when they suddenly notice the crowd that has formed around the girls, trying to take pictures of them. Ryu remembers Yuna's warning to stay away when they're going to or from school, but he sees how uncomfortable the girls are about the crowd. He then apologizes to Shirai and ditches her to rescue the girls. He manages to cut through the crowd and grab them by the hand, then they run across the road together. The crowd wonders who on earth he is while Shirai looks devastated. As Ryu and the girls continue to run for it, they thank him for saving them despite Yuna's warning. One night, Ryu has one of his weird dreams again, but this time, he's a young boy helping a girl who got lost. When he wakes up, he has no idea what to make of it. Later, Ryu fends off a drunk yacht at her circle's drinking party. Yuna and Asahi had begged him to go along since booze turns yacht into a streetlight hoe. Ryu suddenly notices Yahi picking up customers at another table and storms over to rescue her. When the boys ask who on earth he is, he claims that he's Yao's boyfriend. Ya then plays along and breaks the hearts of the virgins who thought they were going to get lucky. After, Ya's friends ask which school Ryu goes to, so Yao lies that he attends Kyoto's Faculty of Medicine. The girls are immediately impressed and turn to another student who's in the same faculty, Mako. Later, they step outside and Mako scolds them for being stupid with their answers. She then hands Yahi a bottle of water to sober up, so Yeg introduces her as a best friend who already knows the truth about Ryu. Relieved, Ryu tries to shake her hand, but Mako slaps it away. She tells Hiryu his only task was to be Ya's scarecrow, and he had no right to act like her boyfriend. But while Hiryu's self-esteem gets rinsed, Ye's brain cells are on vacation. Later on the train, Hiryu apologizes for calling himself her boyfriend, but Ye says it's fine. Hiryu asks if she's never hooked up with anyone despite how famous she is, but Ye reveals she's run through more boyfriends than Braz. Hiryu can't believe his ears, so Ye explains there were always people who promised to marry her, but she never met with any of them. Upon hearing this, Hiryu offers to be her pretend boyfriend whenever she wants, so weirdos don't get close to her. Ye thanks him for the offer, but doesn't think he can make her happy with his size. However, she means the size of the food he serves her, not the thought in your filthy mind. Later at home, Hiryu finds Ye's wallet on the floor. This reminds him of the day he found a kid who was searching for her parents. Ye had gotten a snack to calm her down, so Hiryu promised to pay her back and asked for the receipt, which she grabbed from her wallet. However, when Hiryu comforted the little girl, Ye's ovaries began to shiver with excitement. Just then, the girl's parents ran up to save her from stranger danger. There, they thanked Hiryu and Ye for not kidnapping their daughter and selling her on eBay. After, they told Hiryu the girl was lucky to run into him, since he always tried to save everyone. In the present, Hiryu looks through Ye's wallet and sees her driver's license. However, when he takes a closer look, he notices her name is Reiko Ichijoji, instead of Yae Yamagami. Confused, he heads to her room to ask her about it, but as usual, the only thing inside is a mess. Hiryu then wonders if Yae Yamagami is a figment of his imagination when he suddenly hears a ruckus outside. There, Yae nags Yuna and Asahi for a late-night outing. She even asks Hiryu if he'd go on a stroll with her, making him wonder if she's still drunk. When Yadi insists on going out, the girls say they want to go to bed. Yad then describes all the exclusive scenes around Kyoto they can see while scarfing down food that will eventually cause diarrhea. She then mentions the Inari Shrine, which is a must-see for shrine maidens, so the girls quickly change their minds. Yad then suggests inviting Mako too, but Hiryu figures she'd be too busy removing the stick up her ass. To Hiryu's surprise, Mako showed up immediately, but she wasn't happy to see Hiryu. She insisted she couldn't let such a brat into her car, but when Yadi asked her nicely, she folded like a batch of clean laundry. Hiryu agreed to go, claiming he wanted to keep the girls safe. He then handed Yak her wallet and said he had something important to ask her alone. When Yae said she had something she wanted to talk about too, Asahi and Yuna went red in the face with jealousy. In the car, Hiryu wonders how to bring the strange name up while Yuna and Asahi are suspiciously quiet. They reach the first of Yae's recommendations, which is supposed to be full of fireflies, but it's more lifeless than your Tinder DMs. When the girls search for the fireflies, Hiryu tries to get Yae's attention, but Mako interrupts and suggests they go upstream to look for the fireflies. The other girls leave aside Asahi, who claims she's not a kid who needs to see fireflies, so she sits with Hiryu instead. As they wait, Asahi asks if he prefers back peaches or chest melons. Hiryu gets embarrassed and says he doesn't have a preference as long as he can suck fresh fruit juice out of them. Asahi then asks if he prefers long hair to short hair, but suddenly tells him to forget she asked. She wonders why she's making him choose instead of asking if he has a crush on Yat. Just then, Asahi thinks she spotted some fireflies, but it turns out it's only a reflection of the moon. Asahi then remembers her attempts to look like an adult beside Yat, who did it effortlessly. To her, Yati was a firefly who attracted everyone with her charm. At this, Asahi suggests they join the others to look at real fireflies instead of the fake one she spotted. However, Hiryu says that he actually loves a more casual view like this one. Just then, Yati calls out to Hiryu to come check out the fireflies too, so Asahi pretends to fall asleep on his shoulder so he can't go anywhere. When the girls return, Asahi wonders why she's acting like a simp and blames her lack of sleep. Later, the girls stop at a convenience store and Mako offers to treat them to anything they like. Hiryu commends Mako on her kindness till Mako adds that he wasn't included. When they enter the store, Hiryu texts Ya to ask for alone time, but when he spots Mako turn off Dae's phone, he realizes she's sabotaging him on purpose. Just then, Yuna says she'll pass on Mako's offer, but Hiryu later finds her staring at some ice cream. Hiryu figures she's trying to be considerate to the others, but when he warns that it might backfire, Yuna activates her sulking mode and goes off to be an airhead. Next, Yuna goes to the calorie light section, but still can't bring herself to pick something, as she remembers her mom and tries to stay responsible. However, when she goes outside, she finds Hiryu with a bag of ice cream. He claims to have gone overboard and asks Yuna to help him finish it, so Yuna gets excited to stuff herself with a week's worth of calories. Yuna catches Hiryu staring at her face, so he teases her for looking dumb, and she starts scolding him. Afterwards, Mako tells Uryu he's not so bad after all and offers to treat him next time, but before she walks away, Uryu asks if she knows who Reiko Ichijoji is. Later, they drive back to the shrine and Uryu sees Ye's reply suggesting they talk at the shrine. However, Mako had told him Reiko Ichijoji no longer exists in their world. As they head toward their last stop, Uryu begins to rethink his plan to talk to Yae. When they arrive at the Inari shrine, the girls are excited to get the whole place to themselves, but as they're about to enter, Mako reminds Uryu about her warning. Back at the convenience store, Uryu asked what she meant by Reiko Ichijoji didn't exist, so Mako asked why he wanted to know. Uryu said he was curious, so Mako warned that if he involved himself in it, his dream might never come true. Uryu asked if he was being threatened, but Mako said it was a warning, and if he was only curious, he shouldn't pry. The group heads up the shrine and Yuna realizes how creepy it is when it's dark. Asadi agrees, so Yae suggests they add a test of courage to their outing. Yuna scolds her for suggesting something disrespectful at the shrine, so Yae says she's just kidding. Since the shrine has 2 routes that lead to the summit, she suggests they split up and meet there so they can pray. Uryu immediately volunteers to go with Yae, shocking Yuna and Asadi. Yae figures they'll finally have some alone time, while Uryu decides to ignore Mako's warning. Just then, Mako tells them to count her out so she can nap in the car. She claims she wants to be close by if anything happens to the girls. However, Uryu thinks she might be planning to sabotage him from the shadows. At that, Yae grabs Uryu's arms and suggests they get going, but Asadi suddenly grabs on too and insists she wants to go with Uryu. Yuna can't believe her ears when Mako suddenly volunteers to join his group too to sabotage him. When Uryu asks Asadi what's gotten into her, she claims her horoscope told her to pair up with a blonde idiot. However, Yae objects and tells her to back off since Uryu has already picked her. On the other hand, Yuna begins to imagine the horror of Uryu tag-teaming the girls without her. She immediately volunteers as tribute to stop it, so the girls realize the only way to settle it is a game of rock, paper, scissors. In the end, Asahi and Yae get paired together, and they lament how embarrassing their fight was while Yuna gets Uryu all to herself. As the girls walk up to the summit, Yae asks Asadi if she's that desperate to find out what's going on with her and Uryu. Asahi tries to deny the charges when Yae calls her out on giving her the death stare recently. When Asahi goes quiet, Yae asks if it's possible she's started liking Uryu. Asahi freaks out and stumbles backward, till she trips over the fence, causing Yae to reach out. Meanwhile, Uryu and Yuna's auras continue to repel each other. Yuna suddenly starts yapping about how much of a freeloader he is who happens to cook delicious food. However, she insists his mind is in the gutter, while his hands hope to be inside her sister's. Uryu tells Yuna she's getting the wrong idea when they hear a strange noise and a cat pops out. Uryu is relieved it was just a cat when he finds Yuna clutching his shirt, scared. Yuna promises to let go of his shirt soon, but she actually clings to it for the rest of the way. Uryu asks her why she came there at night, if she was that scared, so Yuna says she always wanted to visit the Inari shrine since it was said to be closest to God at night. She then explains that someone who's passed away in Shinto becomes a god, so Uryu figures she must be hoping to see her mom. Nuns assumes an unbeliever like Uryu would laugh at her, but Uryu reveals that ever since he moved to the shrine, his life was filled with unnatural happenings, and now he kind of believes God might actually be watching him. Just then, Ryu's phone rings and scares Yuna. When Ryu picks up, Asahi tells them Yae fell off the fence. Uryu and Yuna quickly rush back and find Mako with Asahi, who only had a light bruise. When they ask where Yae is, Asadi explains that Yae was trying to save her from going over the fence when she fell instead. She begins to cry as she blames herself, so Yuna hugs her while Mako gets up and walks toward the fence. When Uryu asks what she's doing, Mako insists she has to find Yae. Uryu notices the nervous look on her face, so he grabs her and tells her he can't trust her to go since she's acting strangely. He then insists on going instead and tells Yuna to keep watch over Mako. He assures them he'll be fine as he heads into the forest below. When Uryu gets down, he blames himself for starting the fight to go to the top with Yae. He then calls out for Yae, but the only response he gets is from a strange floating mask. Uryu wonders what the heck is going on, so he runs toward it and suddenly gets surrounded by flower petals. When he opens his eyes, he wonders where he is and why he's in the body of a middle school kid. However, as he continues to ask questions, his memory returns from his childhood self, and he thinks he's returning to the orphanage. On the way, he finds a girl with black hair raising her hand and snapping her fingers. When he goes over there, she tells him she doesn't know where she is. Uryu asks what her name is, so she tells him she's Reiko Ichijoji. Uryu suggests they go to the police when Reiko's stomach grumbles, so he takes her to get something to snack on. He hands her the money to pay, but when Reiko stares at it confused, Uryu wonders if she's never used money before. Later, they sit to eat and Reiko waits for Uryu to feed her. Uryu tells her she'll be useless if she keeps relying on others, so Reiko takes a bite and says it's the tastiest thing she's ever eaten. Uryu wonders how that's possible, so Reiko says she doesn't remember what she eats since someone always makes the food and feeds her. Uryu then figures she must be some rich kid, so he tells her the things she chooses herself would definitely taste better. Reiko then tells Uryu to continue to teach her the things she doesn't know. They head to the playground and Uryu is surprised that she's like an unprogrammed robot who doesn't know how to do anything. Just then, he realizes how much she looks like Yacht, but then he wonders who Yae is. When it gets really late, Uryu suggests they go to the police since her parents must be really worried. However, Reiko says it won't be necessary since her escort has arrived. Just then, Uryu notices several men in black suits who address her as Lady Reiko. Uryu figures she'll be fine now and starts to leave when he hears Reiko tell the man to let go of her. The agents explain that her mother asked them to bring her home by force and plan to have her take extra lessons to replace the ones she skipped. She was only to follow the path her mom had carved out for her from that moment on. As Reiko conceded, Uryu remembered his conversations with Ya, where he realized she couldn't make decisions thanks to her anxiety, and later Yae commended him for always coming to save them. Uryu quickly grabs onto Reiko, who he figures is really Yae, and they make a break for it as Uryu hopes to change her life completely. Moments later, Reiko's bodyguards fan out to search for her while Uryu and Reiko hide from them. Later, Reiko apologizes for getting Uryu involved in her mess, but Uryu points out that her family must be since they didn't care about her safety at all. Just then, Uryu realizes Mahiru might be worried that he's lost and starts to panic, causing Reiko to laugh at how ridiculous he looks. When Uryu catches her laughing, Reiko denies it, explaining that she gets yelled at when she laughs. Uryu realizes Reiko must have run away from her strict family and offers to take her somewhere special. They then head through the forest to a hill that overlooks the city's lights. There, Uryu assures Reiko that she can laugh and say whatever she wants and no one would ever hear her. At this, Reiko proceeds to beg the gods to smother her ugly mother with a pillow. Reiko then lets loose and laments how sick of her controlling mother she is and desperately wants her freedom. When Uryu hears this, he realizes that Yahi is an airhead because even though freedom meant everything to her, she didn't know what to do with it when she got it. When Reiko's done screaming at the air, Uryu suggests they go home, but Reiko pulls him back and tells him not to leave. However, Uryu assures her that she'll be free from now on and promises that if she ever got lost again, he would find her. Just then, the magic petals transport them back to the present, where he finally realizes the Reiko he met when he was a kid was Yae, and is glad she's now okay. Suddenly, Uryu notices Yoi's cleavage overflowing from her shirt and worries she might be embarrassed if she wakes up like that. However, the gods take a piss at him as Yae wakes up just as Uryu grabs onto her shirt with a bloody nose.
No! God, please, no!
After this, Uryu informs the girls that he's found Yae, and they agree to meet at the entrance. On the way back, Yae apologizes for worrying Uryu and asks what important thing he needs to ask her about. When Uryu confirms she's ready to talk about it, he explains how he found her ID with Reiko on it, and asks if she's the same Reiko he met when he was a kid. Yae confirms this, so Uryu tells her he remembered something important too. Some days before they first met, Uryu woke up and discovered he had wet the bed. He knew he would never live it down if the others found out, so he tried to hide the evidence. However, Mahiru found out and scolded him, and this became his deepest, darkest secret, which he planned to take to his grave. Yanni asked why he was telling her, so Uryu explained that it didn't seem fair that he was the only one to learn a secret that day. He then says he's happy to know that the girl who was once suffering is now doing well. At this, Yae remembers how she rebelled against her mother who disowned her in return. She then ended up at the Amigami shrine where their mother renamed her Yada and welcomed her to a new life. After this, she began playing with Yuna and Asadi and finally found her freedom. At this, Yae grabs onto Uryu and thanks him because he's the reason she was able to change who she was and be reborn as Ya. Later, Yuna and Asadi happily reunite with Ya. Meanwhile, Uryu informs Mako that he now knows Yae's secret. He then explains that he wouldn't hesitate to help Ya if she's in need, even if it costs him his dreams like Mako warned. Upon hearing this, Mako's ice-cold heart finally gets thawed as she suggests that Uryu might actually change Yae's fate after all. After, Mako drops them off at the shrine as they wave goodbye. When they head in, the girls notice Yae has already gone up to her room, so Uryu comments that she really is a free spirit now. Meanwhile, Yae crashes on her bed and screams into her pillow. Once she stops, she realizes she doesn't have a brain parasite, but is actually in love with Uryu. Some nights later, Uryu tries to study when he laments how hot it is. Yae immediately offers to get a fan for him later when Uryu wonders what the heck she's doing in his room anyway. Yae insists that it's okay for her to be in there since she's family, unless Uryu is having unholy thoughts about her in pajamas. Uryu denies the allegations, so Yae decides to stay and draw him for her school project. While she's at it, Uryu realizes how clingy she's been since the shrine incident and wonders if she could be in love with him. However, he remembers when Asahi asked her how she felt. Back then, she said he was just a nice guy, so he decides it must be his crotch demons trying to deceive him. Meanwhile, Yae finishes her drawing of Uryu and leaves a heart beside it. Just then, Yuna and Asahi bust into the room and accuse her of indecent conduct just by being in his room. Yae tells them to keep it down while Uryu studies and writes that she's doing her assignment. Yuna then prepares to leave when she notices Asahi already seated, insisting on staying too. Yuna is then forced to wait with her idiot sisters, as she wonders why they've both been acting strange since the day they stayed out late. Just then, the girls notice the heart beside Uryu's drawing and freak out. Yuna asks if they're dating, so Yae says they aren't official yet. She intends to wait till he's done with his studies before asking him out, which means she'll be the one to marry Uryu and save the shrine. The girls ask what the hell she's talking about while Uryu finally notices them and asks why they're all in his room. The following week, Asahi's class teacher distributes paper strips to the class and instructs them to write their wishes on them and return them to Asahi, so she can hang them on the bamboo trees during Tanabata at the shrine. During their free period later, the class separated into groups with everyone talking about what they wanted to write. Asahi is sitting at her desk observing everyone when her friends ask what she wants to write as her wish. She tells them that as a shrine maiden, her only wish is that everyone's wish comes true. Just then, a Regina George clone named Karen Matsugazaki approaches Asahi's group and tells her not to act as though she has a caring heart like Mother Teresa. This leads to the two girls exchanging a few choice words before they are interrupted by the girls standing next to Asahi's desk. The girls ask Karen what her wish is, so she holds up her paper strip so the girls can read what she's written on it. They aren't surprised when they see that she wishes to win the marathon. Since the marathon is in 2 days, the girls ask Asahi if she will have time to focus on it, because they know she is preparing for Tanabata. Asahi had assured her that she would be fine because she was experienced when it came to juggling between jobs. She then tells Karen that she won't lose to a pampered princess like her, because her family is coming to watch her. As she says this, she holds up her paper for Karen to read, and Karen is shocked to learn that she wrote down the same wish as she did. Later that day, Asahi arrives at the shrine when Uryu is helping Yuna and Yae set up the bamboo trees for Tanabata. Yae asks if she has written down her wishes, and Asahi holds up multiple papers she used to write her wishes. Uryu tells her that she's being greedy, but Asahi tells him not to be a naysayer. Yae and Yuna call Asahi's attention back to them, and they tell her that they will be at her upcoming marathon to cheer for her. Asahi tries to tell them that they don't need to be there, but her sisters shush her and say they will attend the race. They tell her that Uryu will also be there, causing her to tease him. She says he wants to attend the race because he wants to shamelessly stare at her exposed belly to fulfill one of his dirty fantasies, but he denies it. The next day at school, the track team is informed by their coach that the race has been postponed due to the bad weather. He says the race will take place the following week, which leaves Asahi feeling disturbed as the race falls on the same day as the festival. Of course, Karen sees this as an opportunity and she tells Asahi that she is sure she will lose the race because she will focus more on the festival preparations. Asahi assures her that she won't lose since she never does anything half-heartedly. Later that day, when Asahi returns home, she tells her sisters about the changes, and they apologize since they will not attend the race. Asahi gets annoyed with their behavior and tells them to stop acting like it is the end of the world. She asks them not to worry about her as she is a big girl, and tells them to focus on making the festival a good one. After saying all that, she leaves to train and Uryu tells Yuna and Yae to do as she asked or else they upset her. The week flies by and finally, it is the day before the race, so Asahi bids her sisters farewell as she has to spend the night at a hotel close to the venue. On the day of the race, Asahi struggles to keep up as she is distracted and keeps thinking about the festival. She tries to push those thoughts away and focus on the race but finds it hard to do so. Just as she is about to give up, she hears Yomiko's voice cheering for her and is surprised to see her standing with Uryu. It turns out that Iryu called Yomiko a few days before to tell her about the race and ask her to come out to cheer for Asahi. As Asahi runs past Iryu and Yomiko, Yomiko urges Iryu to cheer for Asahi, so he runs after her. He tells Asahi to do her best and shows her his phone, which is on a video call with her sisters, who also cheer her on. At the end of the day, the festival goes on without a hitch and Asahi wins the race much to Karen's annoyance. On the train ride home, Asahi sleeps in Yomiko's lap, and Iryu thanks Yomiko for coming out to cheer for Asahi. Yomiko tells him she doesn't mind and teases him for going out of his way to ensure that Asahi isn't alone in the race. After they arrived at the station, Iryu and Asahi bid goodbye to Yomiko, and as they walked home together, Asahi thanked Iryu for being at the race. The next day, Iryu goes to get the paper, and as he's reading it, he notices that the date is reading June 28 and not July 8 like it is supposed to. Immediately, he goes to check the calendar and sees the same thing. Still not convinced, he checks his phone and also sees the same thing. So he begins to wonder if he is stuck in another unrealistic phenomenon again. As the day progresses, he realizes that everything is the same as before, and that he is the only person who knows they are in a time loop. However, when Asahi returns from school and starts acting strangely, he pulls her aside and asks if she is also aware of what is happening. Asahi tells him yes and says she's happy that someone else is experiencing the same thing she is. They decide to see how the loop will play out and note any difference. The week goes on as expected and Asahi wins the race. However, they find themselves back in the time loop again. This time they try to do things differently, but it changes nothing. So Iryu tells Asahi that they might be stuck in the loop because of her and suggests that she forfeit the race and attend the festival. Asahi tries to refuse, but he tells her there is no harm in trying, so she agrees. The next day, Asahi rejoins her sisters for the festival after deciding to forfeit the race, stating that the festival is best when all three sisters are present. Meanwhile, Karen is training even harder for the race, telling herself that she will defeat Asahi this time. Years ago, Asahi has always competed in marathons alone, and while her sisters offered to come and support her, she always declined them as running was the only time for her to be alone without pressure. She won her first marathon, defeating Karen who refused to lose. But Karen was angry that Asahi didn't run her fullest, so on that day, Karen declared that she would one day defeat Asahi, even when Asahi tried her hardest. Back in the present, Asahi informs her coach of her decision to forfeit the marathon, and he understands her decision, but unbeknownst to them, Karen listens and goes to confront the coach. With the Tanabata approaching, it is the third Tanabata for Asahi and Iryu as they have been facing the time loop. But unlike Iryu, who has been locked in facing this dilemma, Asahi is taking it easy by fooling around like a donut. Just then, Asahi announces that they will be holding a popularity election between the sisters, and that each sister will be assigned a color. Ya with green, Mina with red, and Asahi with blue. While they all initially object, they can see how it will help the festival, but Yuna is convinced that no man would vote for her and her spicy cheeks. However, she is proven wrong as on the day of the Tanabata festival, sweaty and stinky dudes line up for them to vote for their favorite sister that they want to see gobble their glizzies. With the festival going brilliantly, they praise Asahi as their marketing office, especially since she never hung out with the sisters in the past. It surprises Iryu to hear this, and when he asks them to explain, they inform him that in the past, Asahi often refused to play with them and opted to spend her time alone running. Just then, everyone's favorite tomboy, Shirahi, pops up to join the festival. She expresses how amazing the festival is and reveals that she also wrote down a wish. On it, it says that she wants to go to Kyoto University with Iryu as her baby daddy, but she deleted the last part and excuses herself, saying that she miswrote things. Shirahi asks Iryu if he made his wish, and when Iryu reveals that he didn't, Shirahi tells him that he hasn't changed a bit. She recalls how in the past, Iryu refused to make any wish, stating that no gods or musty-looking tooth fairies were able to make him a doctor. But after hearing this, Shirahi declares that she will make the wish instead so she can join Iryu also as a doctor. The girls laugh at her story, realizing that Iryu has always been a god-hating chump. After the girls hang Shirahi's wish, it's time to announce the winner of the popularity contest. After counting the votes, it is determined that it's a three-way tie with all three sisters achieving the same amount of votes. However, Iryu hasn't made his vote, and when the girls force him to show his vote, Asahi sees that Iryu voted for her, and she proudly claims that Iryu's picked her to win. They demand Iryu to explain why she voted for Asahi, stating that she tickled his pickle to win that vote. While Iryu is begging Asahi to help explain, Asahi makes it worse by saying that the two of them have a secret others don't know, causing Iryu to get beat up. Then, Asahi is walking around alone when Karen pops up. Asahi asks why she's here, and Karen makes an excuse saying that she had something come up that caused her to also forfeit the race. Asahi suggests that Karen make a wish, but Karen leaves refusing to make one, saying that her wish will never come true. Asahi finds Karen's wish paper, and she's surprised to see that Karen's wish is to have a real race against Asahi, which will now never happen. It leaves Asahi shocked and left standing for hours. Even with the festival being a success, both Asahi and Yuryu are still stuck inside the time loop. While Yuryu is panicking about it, Asahi calmly continues her typing with blindfold practice, and it surprises Yuryu to see her so uncaring about their situation. He has enough and takes off her blindfold to scold her, but when Asahi turns around, she's in tears and not being able to cope with the situation. Asahi tries to cover her sadness, but Yuryu assures her that he will always be there with her to face this time loop. Asahi folds to his hot and manly riz, but Yae pops up seeing the whole thing, thinking that Yuryu was about to start humping and pumping Asahi as she wasn't there. Yae leaves annoyed, but with Yuryu's words, Asahi feels assured. Yuryu suggests that they should try both the marathon and festival on this loop, and with a faint smile, Asahi agrees. Later, Yuryu calls Yomiko to ask her to cheer Asahi on her race, but also gives her advice to make the festival a success. Instead of answering, Yomiko asks Yuryu if this is what Asahi really wants, and after thinking it through, Yuryu realizes that everything he and Asahi have been doing has always been his suggestion, and not what Asahi truly wished for. Yomiko explains that making decisions for Asahi is a narcissistic behavior, but while he's listening, Yuryu slowly sees that he is the exact person Yomiko is describing. Yuryu cuts the phone call short and tells Yomiko that he intends to really think about what Asahi really wants. Meanwhile, Asahi is in her room, facing the conflict in her head, asking herself questions about why things have been unbalanced. She recalls how she was offered a scholarship where her teacher believed in her to be the runner to leave Usain Bolt in the dust. From then on, Asahi started believing that she wanted to leave home and become the greatest runner to exist since my dad went to buy milk. However, the other side of her also loved her sisters so much that it pained her to imagine moving away from them. In the present, Asahi doesn't know which one she really has become and which one she really wants. Suddenly, someone knocks on her room, and when she opens it, she screams so loud that Yuryu hears her. When Yuryu checks on her, he sees Karen on top of her, ready for a hot cardio session between two girls that doesn't involve running. Moments earlier, Karen had appeared at Asahi's door and asked to come in. Once inside, Karen lived up to her name by nagging Asahi about how basic her room looked. Asahi pointed out that she didn't think Karen would check up on her, but she assured Karen she was perfectly fine. Upon hearing this, Karen said she didn't need to hold back and began stripping Asahi for a sweaty workout. However, unlike what you degenerates thought, she really was challenging Asahi to compete with her in a race. Asahi was surprised too, which is when Yuryu busted in and began his period. Later, Karen and Asahi do some warm-up exercises to prepare for the match while Yuryu gets roasted for being a shameless peeping Tom. As punishment, Yuryu is forced to be the timekeeper of the race. Karen explains that just like in a 10-kilometer marathon, the first to reach 5 laps around the course wins. She then adds that the loser will have to do whatever the winner says and demands that if she wins, Asahi will have to stop running forever. This throws Asahi off guard, but Karen asks to start the race. Yuryu calls it, and the girls take off running. Asahi asks why Karen wants her to stop running, so Karen points out that Asahi hasn't been able to beat her personal record due to negligence. While Asahi was slacking off, Karen was working extra hard to catch up, so she didn't intend to run after someone who doesn't take it seriously. For Karen, ever since she met Asahi, the feeling of running to win became special, but it wasn't the same for Asahi, which is why Karen was determined to win once and for all. Sure enough, and to Yuryu's surprise, Karen whooped Asahi's rice cakes and won. Karen rejoiced over finally beating Asahi's personal record, which meant she didn't need to stalk Asahi anymore. When Karen insisted Asahi stop running from now on, Asahi argued that the race didn't count. Karen said she was just making excuses, but Asahi pointed out that it was unfair to say something that made her opponent lose focus. When Karen disagreed, Asahi decided to try her literal girl-on-girl method to get through to her insides, figuratively. Asahi explained that when she had to choose between the shrine and running, she planned to ditch running forever, but no matter which she chose, she only ended up more confused, and she didn't know why. However, when she saw Karen cross the finish line, which meant she could never run again, she realized she was happy being someone's goal. She always wanted someone to look up to her like an adult, which made it just as special as her services for the shrine. Asahi suggested that they race together for real on the 7th of July, and this time she wouldn't waver. Karen was inspired by Asahi's resolve, so she agreed to kick her behind again at the marathon. Yuryu interrupted and asked if Asahi needed him to cheer her on again, but Asahi told him she'd rather focus on her match with Karen this time and his chiseled jawline might distract her. Yuryu crashed through the ground in disappointment when he realized how useless his presence was after all. However, Asahi made sure to thank him for thinking of a lot of ways to make her happy. She then promises to go back to being the spoiled little sister he enjoys doting on. Yuryu cheers up and Karen points out that something seems a little bit taboo about their brother-sister relationship. Days later, Asahi sends a picture of Karen and her while she holds up the gold as the winner. The next day, Asahi and Yuryu rejoice that it's finally the 8th of July, which means they've broken free of the loop from hell. Yuryu is relieved he can now focus on his studies, but Asahi mocks him for swearing to be by her side, no matter how many loops they face. Yuryu asks if she was sad she didn't have him to herself, so Asahi explains that she's now curious about their future together. Just then, Yuna interrupts and nags them for disturbing the neighbors. She then tells Asahi there was no time to frolic about since they have another Tanabata festival. Asahi seems confused, so they head inside and Chidori explains that starting that year, they'll have 2 Tanabatas on July 7 and August 7. Apparently, Yamiko was to thank for suggesting the plan. Chidori then tells Asahi that she'll have to plan something fun for the festival as head of the publicity department. When Asahi agrees excitedly, her internal scales finally balance. August 7 arrives, and the girls welcome their visitors to once again write their wishes on papers like them. The crowd goes on about how cute the girls look, and Yuryu is surprised they were able to pull that many people. Yae commends Asahi for pulling it off and calls him by a different name. Yuri then asks if it's really okay for shrine maidens to do cosplay at the shrine, but even Yuna seems to be enjoying cosplaying a maiden high on acid. Later, Asahi gasses herself up for a job well done, and the girls agree that they couldn't have done it without her. Asahi gets embarrassed over the compliment, making Yati point out how much Asahi acts like a little sister now. Asahi and Yuna remind the airhead that's what she is, so Yati hugs her and tells her she's glad she's gotten a lot off her chest and become more honest. Asahi realizes she's always had her sister looking out for her and says she's really glad to be their little sister. When the festival's over, Yamiko shows up to surprise Asahi, so Asahi thanks her for the suggestion to have a second Tabata. Yomiko reveals that it wasn't actually her suggestion and flashes back to the date Yuryu called her to ask about holding the shrine on the 7th of August. Yomiko warned that it would cause a lot of inconvenience, and to make it possible, Yuryu would have to convince all the vendors and even that snake if he was really serious. When Yomiko reveals this, Asahi gets embarrassed that Yuryu did all that for her. Yomiko tells her to keep it a secret just as Yuryu walks up and asks what they're talking about. Asahi claims it's nothing and rushes off before Yuryu sees her red cheeks. When she leaves, Yuryu thanks Yomiko for helping him grant Asahi's wish. Yomiko insists they overcame their challenges by themselves, so Yuryu asks for something strange. He asks how many Tanabata festivals there have been now, but Yomiko pretends not to know. Later, Yomiko prays at the shrine and tells the gods they play too much. At this, a creepy masked figure proves her right. Later, Asahi makes the final post when Yuna calls her out for the fireworks. Outside, a large festival is in progress, and all the boys drool over the Amigami sisters. Asahi notices but thinks they're only referring to Yacht and Yuna, since they took their time to dress up unlike her, who looks childish. That's until she spots Yae playing children's games and Yuna gawking at cotton candy, which completely changes her mind. Afterward, Asahi suggests they find a good spot for the fireworks when she notices a different pair of girls standing behind her. When she rushes off embarrassed, Yuryu spots her and figures they got separated. He then grabs her hand and leads her somewhere else while Asahi feels her heart skip a beat. Later, they stop at a lake to wait for the girls and Yuryu apologizes for being so meddlesome in the loop. Asahi assures him that without him, she wouldn't have witnessed all the paths that allowed her to choose for herself. Just then, the fireworks go off and Asahi teases that Yuryu might fall for her in such a setting. Yuryu says he doesn't feel anything like that for her, so Asahi realizes that the only reason Yuryu would go so far for her is because he sees her as his little sister. Unlike his sisters, she was sure if Yuryu had to choose a partner, he would surely never choose her. However, when the last firework goes off, Asahi grabs Yuryu and kisses him as he looks confused. She then declares her love for him and is determined to win the race for him too. The girls finally meet up with them, and Asahi goes to join them, while Yuryu wonders what's going on. The next day, Yuryu walks to an exam center when he remembers the kiss with Asahi and tries to bang it out of his head. He continues like nothing happened till the memory returns and sends it back to humping a vending machine, after he remembers his plan to attend Kyoto's medical school and become a doctor. For that, he must see the result of his mock exam. He figures he's scored a perfect 8 as usual and heads inside only to find to be staring back at him. Yuryu can't believe his virgin eyes when Shirei notices him spiraling. Yuryu asks what she's doing there, so she explains that she's also aiming for Kyoto Medical School and is attending classes. She figures Yuryu must have gotten a B and teases him while she holds up her A and says she's in the lead now. Shirati informs him that he's no match for her because he's too busy getting distracted by 3 cute girls and can't lose to such a B-ranker. Later, Yuryu throws a tantrum and determines to prove Shirahi wrong, but he agrees he's been slacking when he looks at his poor grade. Moments later, the girls show up at his room and are surprised to see he's not inside. Yuna remembers him saying he was going over to Mahiru's place and figures today must be the day. Asadi seems relieved, so Yae points out that she's been avoiding Yuryu lately, but Asadi denies it. Just then, Yuna notices a squeeze paper and the girls look at what's on it. Meanwhile, Yuryu joins Mahiru and the kids to visit the communal shrine. There, Mahiru asks Yuryu if he's gotten used to life at the shrine. Yuryu admits that he sometimes gets caught in unfathomable phenomena, but all Mahiru cares about is which girl Yuryu prefers to goon to. Yuryu claims that he's not close enough to choose, so Mahiru points out that the girls are practically pimping themselves to him. Yuryu wonders how Mahiru knows that, so she blames the wind even though Yomiko gives their deets like a Housewives of Amigami Shrine recap. In response, Yuryu says that though he appreciates their feelings and wants them to be happy, his entrance exams are coming up and he has no time to be tongue wrestling and belly bumping. Mahiru advises him respond to their feelings and asks what he's planning to do for the future anyway. Yuryu wonders what she means, so she points out that Yuryu tends to push through things without a plan. Yuryu thinks about his future and decides it is to graduate from Kyoto University and become a doctor like that weird dream he had. Suddenly, he hears the kids clapping for Buddha, so he corrects them and explains that clapping is for God, while keeping their hands still is for Buddha. Mahiru teases Yuryu for knowing this, so he explains that he was forced to learn it since the girls care so much. Mahiru points out that he never cared about this kind of thing before, which means he's changed a lot. However, Yuryu explains that a grave is still proof that a dead person cannot return and nothing can change that, which is why he doesn't like praying for the dead. He intends to become a doctor so the kids won't have to pray in the first place. Though he'd like to protect the shrine for the girls, he doesn't plan to inherit. Just then, Yuryu thinks he sees something behind the trees, but Mahiru calls his attention and says he'd make a good priest too. When Yuryu returns to the shrine later, he notices Chidori and the girls burning something. He asks what they're doing, so they explain it's a ceremonial bonfire to light the path for their ancestors. Asai says goodbye to their mother, and the girls remember they have to pray for Yuryu's mom too, so she can rest over there with no worries. Yuryu explains they don't need to since he just visited her grave, but the girls loosen their red ribbons and assure him his mom is right there with them. Yuna tells his mom how diligent her son is as he never skips his studies. Asai tells her he's a bit of a simp and freeloader, but at least he's happy. And lastly, Yae tells her he's always helping them and is a cool and dependable person. They assure her she can rest where she is and thank her for letting them meet him. Suddenly, Yuryu looks over at the clothesline and sees his mom waving to him, right before the laundry mysteriously gets blown off the line. That's when the girls notice the tears streaming down Yuryu's face as he stares in that direction. The girls are surprised he's an ugly crier, but Yuryu claims he just got some dirt in his eye. The girls then gather around him to comfort him by patting his head, causing Chidori to say it's the perfect time. The girls agree, but Yuryu asks what on earth they're talking about. At this, they head inside to discuss the secret of the Amigami Shrine. Years ago, Yae joined the Amigami Shrine and was introduced to Asadi and Yuna. They also had different names and birthplaces like Yae, but from that day on, they would become sisters who nurtured the love given to them by God. The Shrine Maiden and their new mom at the time was named Chibara Amigami. In the present, the girls solemnly explain that they're not related by blood, but Yuryu says he's known that for a long time. The girls ask how he can be so calm, but Yuryu remembers his encounter with Yae's past. Yuna asks if he's curious about their real identities and mothers, but Yuryu smirks like an idiot as he can tell how kind of a mother Chibara was to them because of how close they are. Yuryu reminds them they're 4 peas in a pod and suggests they get along better from now on. The girls figure it's so like him to act cool, which is why they have to carry out their next plan. The next day, Asadi offers to help Yuryu with the laundry. Yuryu brings up the matter of her confession, but she says she knows he has exams coming up and has no time to act out Targaryen fantasies. Yuryu apologizes for not having anything else to say, but Asadi says she only wanted him to notice that she loves him. Later, Yuryu goes for cleaning duty in Yeva's room and is surprised to see it emptier than Yurdi. Yuryu commends her for cleaning, when the closet behind suddenly threatens to explode. Yeda explains that she was just about to start the real cleaning and needs him to leave, but she thanks him for all his help as he goes. Later, Yuryu walks down the hallway when he finds Yuna making a curry that doesn't seem to be radioactive or alive. He commends her and tells her to work on her speed, which she says is the reason she decided to prepare in advance. From then on, the girls continue to take on more and more chores till Yuryu admits they'd changed a lot, and so has he. One morning, they all have Yuna's cooking, and Yuryu says it'll be a big help if she can continue preparing meals. That's when the girls thank him for everything he's done, but say it's time to say goodbye. That day at the communal shrine, the girls overheard Yuryu say he couldn't inherit the shrine. When they discussed it, they realized that just like their dream is to protect the shrine, Yuryu's is to protect the kids at the orphanage by becoming a doctor. There, they all agreed to set him free. Asi asked Hia if she was okay with it, so she explained that it was because she loved him that she could support him. Asi said it was the same for her, and Yuna concluded what they had to do. Yuryu couldn't believe his ears, but the girls began packing up his things before he could argue. Once they were done, Yuryu reminded them of all the housework that needed to be done when it finally hit him that they'd been practicing for this reason. The girls assure him they'll find another hair and tell him to go live his dream while they continue praying for him. Yuryu remembers the last few days and how he used to pray for his mom and finally agrees. He thanks them and walks off with his bags for a second before turning back and volunteering himself as tribute for an heir. He admits he was wrong about God and realizes a prayer for someone can become their support. His new dream is to save someone's life as a doctor and their heart by God, which is why he wants to inherit the Emigami Shrine. After confirming Yuryu's sure, the girls jump on him and ask if he can really juggle being a doctor and a priest, and who he intends to marry. Yuryu promises to think about it from then on, and they all mock him for being a playboy. The next day, Yuryu wakes up with a cold, so Yuna takes care of him and offers him some porridge. As Yuryu tastes the porridge, Yuna apologizes if it doesn't meet his standards, but Yuryu gobbles it down at once and tells her it suits his tastes, making Yuna happy. Just then, Yuryu notices the thermometer is out of batteries and asks Yuna if she has a spare. However, Yuna grabs his face and puts their foreheads together instead. Yuryu warns that she's a bit too close, but Yuna doesn't seem to be listening. Moments later, Yuryu wakes up and figures it must have been a dream since Yuna would never do that. However, when he sits up, he notices the bowl he used to eat porridge while Yuna hides outside the door. She wonders why she allowed herself to get so close, when she should be supporting the heir to the shrine without gutter thoughts. She then wonders if she caught a fever too. The next morning, Ye and Asavi ask Yuryu if he's feeling better. He says he is but asks what brain parasite was eating Yuna instead. Asahi tells Yuna about her mistake, so Yuna fixes it while they all wonder what's wrong with her. Just then, Yeda whispers something to Yuryu, but accidentally kisses his cheek, making his soldiers stand at attention. After, they head off to the side, and Ye suggests Yuna's behavior might be a sign that she's hiding something, and Yuryu immediately tells her to leave Yuna to him, since he's got the most severe hero complex since Naruto. They head back to check on Yuna, but her hair now looks like a vulture's nest. That's when Yia wonders if Yuna might be sick in love, which is why she's blinded. Yuryu stops to think about anything that might have happened recently when he hears a thud and sees Yuna on the floor. They'd all run up to help, but Yuna insists she's fine and can handle it on her own. At this, Ye grabs her and feels her forehead, realizing the klutz just has a fever. They figure she must have caught it from Yuryu, which is why she was acting strange, so they advise her to get some rest. However, Yuna insists she can't just leave all the work for them to do so. Ye headbutts some sense into the fool. Ye scolds her and tells her not to overwork herself. She assures her they have all the help they need with Yuryu around, and tells her to rely on them more. Upon hearing this, Yuna turns into her airhead form and starts to cry. She points out that Yuryu inheriting the shrine is absurd, so they need to do what they can to support his life, which is why she needs to work hard. Yuryu tells her to snap out of it, as they can't afford to have her working harder than she does. Yuna apologizes for causing him trouble, but Yuryu explains that if she works harder, they'll have to work harder too. This is because Yuna devotes herself most to the shrine, and she's the one who faces him when he said he didn't believe in God. Just looking at Yuna makes him want to devote his life to the shrine too. The girls agree with him, so Yuna gets up and jumps onto Yuryu's back. She agrees to get some rest and asks him to carry her to her room. She apologizes for troubling everyone, but promises that when she gets well, she makes them work twice as hard. That night, Yuna says she's made a full recovery, but the girls ask her if she's sure. She then points out that the next day is the start of a new term, so she'll pray not to get sick again. After, Yuna prays at the shrine, and that creepy masked entity touches her on the head. The next morning, Asahi chews Uryu out for entering the bathroom so casually while she's in there. Uryu calmly apologizes, so Asahi offers an incognito view, but he tells her it's unladylike and shuts the door on her. Later in school, Mistusko announces that they'll be doing the Changelings play, which tells the story of a shy, girly prince and an outward boyish princess who spend their lives as the opposite gender. One of the girls asks who the main cast will be, so Mistuko appoints Uryu as the young prince, since he's the only boy in class. All the girls agree with the idea and figure he'll make a great woman, but Yuna looks at him with rage. Uryu shockingly agrees to do the play, so Yuna insists she doesn't want to see him cross-dressed for the sake of his co-star. Some of the girls say they wouldn't mind being his co-star, so Yuna quickly volunteers to do it instead. After class, Mitsuko tells Yuna she is going to volunteer for princess, either way since she figures she must be dating Uryu. Yuna tries to deny it, but Mitsuko says she's noticed them staring at each other and going off in secret alone. Yuna then realizes they'd created a huge misunderstanding, while Mitsuko promises to get them enough alone time to swap DNA. Later at home, Asahi is excited about their cross-dressing play and figures it's a must-see event. Yuna warns them not to expect too much, so Asahi points out that he's already getting into character with the way he's sitting. Yea says she's surprised Uryu accepted the role, so he explains he didn't want to be rude since everyone endorsed him, and he'll be fine since Yuna is his co-star. Asahi and Yea immediately get jealous that they're showing off, but they tell them not to get the wrong idea. That evening, when Yuna showers, she tries hard to contain her excitement. Afterward, Yuna gets a call from Uryu, who says he can't believe they're doing a play at such a time. Yuna points out he's the one that accepted the role, but at least they'll get to fool everyone for a while now. Until then, they promise not to say a single word to anyone about the fact that they've switched bodies. After the call, Uryu and Yuna's body laments all the pesky phenomenons that keep happening, while that creepy masked spirit keeps watch. It started 2 days ago when Uryu suddenly found himself in front of the shrine and realized he now had the weight of the world on his chest. He ran inside and discovered he was Yuna. Then he went up to his room and discovered Yuna waiting for him. Yuna suggested they devise a plan quickly, but Uryu wondered how she could be so composed. Yuna said she was surprised and couldn't believe they were actually experiencing this, but when Uryu asked what she meant, she changed the subject. They both agree to act like each other and exchange information, so their lives don't get screwed up. As for their physiological differences, they live it up to Wikipedia to show them the way. Yuna is surprised to see what a real sausage looks like, unlike the ones she practiced with, while Uryu struggles with the tortures of a bra. However, when he finally gets it off, he almost bleeds himself to death. After this, their lives were a living nightmare, and everyone kept wondering what was wrong. Neither of them could wait to go back to normal. One evening, Uryu suggested confiding in the girls, which would make their lives 99% easier. However, before they could discuss further, Asahi scolded them for flirting and told them to get back to work. Uryu tells Yuna they should talk at dinner and leaves her alone with Asahi. Asahi gets closer and jealously tells who she thinks is Uryu that he seems pretty close with Yuna these days, asking what he thinks about her. At the same time, Yael approaches Yuna, who she thinks is Yuna, and asks what she was talking to Uryu about. Meanwhile, fake Uryu tells Asahi Yuna that he is just family, so Asahi is glad to hear she still has a chance to become his lover. Fake Uryu can't believe his ears, so Asahi says she's happy she confessed and tells it to keep it their little secret. At the same time, fake Yuna claims she was teaching Uryu about the shrine, so Yael tells her to leave it to him, since she knows about her feelings for Uryu. When fake Yuna goes pale, Yael wonders why since she already knows. She then tells Yuna not to tell Uryu by mistake since she's bad at keeping secrets. With this, Yuna and Uryu agree they can never tell them about the body swap. Later, Uryu decides they'll have to find a way to return to their usual bodies without letting them know, but he figures it should be easy, since their family doesn't have a clue. However, Mitsuko seems to know something's up. Later, Uryu and Yuna practice their lines for the play with the help of Mitsuko, who praises them for acting perfectly as the opposite gender. Just then, another classmate reminds them that they have practical exams next week, and when Uryu remembers Yuna sucks at English, he kisses his good grades goodbye. Later, Uryu finds Yuna studying hard for the exams, so he tells her not to be so tense. Yuna insists she doesn't want his grades to get worse, making Uryu malfunction, because it's weird to be rizzed up by his own body. Uryu tells her not to bother since he's not one to worry over getting a single bad grade. However, Yuna continues to force herself to study. Later at the shrine, fake Uryu practices his English, so Yae points out that he's studying harder than usual. Uryu worries about Yuna when Yae asks if fake Yuna heard what she said. When it's clear she didn't, Yea says they're counting on her for their prayer request on Saturday. Fake Yuna asks what she needs to do, so Yea tells her she'll do the prayer dance. Later, fake Yuna freaks out at the idea of messing up the dance. Yea and Asadi wonder why she's practicing since she can do it perfectly, so fake Yuna insists she must keep sharpening her skills. The girls praise her for working hard and hope to learn from her, while fake Yuna laughs nervously. In reality, Uryu realizes that since Yuna is typically dense, she must have put in a lot of effort to get her dancing perfect. Now, he doesn't want to hurt her reputation by making a mistake. Suddenly, Uryu remembers Yuna's words and understands how she feels. He agrees that neither of them wants to ruin the things they've worked hard on bit by bit. The next day in school, fake Yuna groans from her body aches, so Mitsuko wonders how hard she practiced to be so stiff. However, she points out how much fun Yuna seems to be having and figures it must have something to do with Uryu. Yuna insists that they're not dating, but she says things should be easier now that they've found an heir for the shrine. Mitsuko is surprised to hear this, and Uryu is surprised Yuna hasn't told Mitsuko about this. Fake Yuna apologizes for not telling her earlier, but Mitsuko interrupts and demands to know who she is since she's not Yuna. Uryu tries to convince her, but Mitsuko says the real Yuna wouldn't be reassured because they found an heir. Mitsujo then worries that an evil spirit has taken over Yuna and trying to exorcise it away, while Uryu wonders why Yuna isn't happy the shrine has an heir. Suddenly, the creepy masked entity touches fake Yuna, and he suddenly finds himself in a strange neighborhood, back inside his body. Uryu wonders what's going on and remembers seeing that mask when Ye fell off the cliff. He wonders if this is her doing or if he's losing his mind. Uryu then wonders what Ye is doing in this neighborhood when he finds a strange key in his pocket. Meanwhile, Yuna returns to her body as Mitsuko prays hard for Yuna's evil spirit to leave. Yuna tells her she's okay, so Mitsuko asks what she meant by saying they found an heir. At this, Yuna says she was just joking about finding an heir. Later at the shrine, Yuna tells Uryu it's good to be back to normal. Yuna is simply relieved they solved the problem when Uryu holds up the key he found, shocking her. Yuna claims that she found it and intends to take it to the police, so Uryu returns it to her. He then asks why she didn't tell Mitsuko about the hair, so she claims she was just busy. Uryu asks if she's against him inheriting the shrine, but Yuna says she's happy as long as he continues to put in good work for the shrine. Uryu laments that he thought he understood her, but ever since they switched bodies, he keeps seeing hidden sides of her. He then begs to know more about her, making her red in the face. As he continues the mushy talk, Yaya and Asadi show up and glare at him. They lament about hating playboys, and Uryu curses his terrible luck. After, Yuna figures Uryu is worried about her since she's his family, but she assures him there's no reason to be. That night, Uryu remembers Yuna's words, which seem to conflict with Mitsuko's words. He then wonders if he'd be able to find out more of her hidden side if they switched again. After hearing this, the masked spirit appears beside Uryu. The next morning, Uryu wakes up as Yuna again. Later, Yuna assists Uryu with her bra as he tells her about the fox-masked woman. Uryu suspects she's behind their situation and asks if Yuna knows anything about her. Yuna says it's probably God, since it's only natural for God to be at a shrine. She then says she envies Uryu for seeing God and tells Uryu to get used to wearing bras on her own. As Yuna helps him adjust her overflowing melons, the fox god causes them to switch back. As they both panic, the fox god laughs in amusement. Later at school, Uryu and Yuna's body laments switching back yet again and wonders what this god could possibly want. Suddenly, he notices a work catalog and wonders if it's Yuna's. When he flips through it, he finds it hard to picture Yuna in a day job and wonders if Yuna isn't planning to run the shrine with everyone. He then remembers that conversation where Yuna said her will doesn't matter, so he wonders if she had another dream all along. Just then, Mitsuko shows up and asks what she's holding, so Uryu panics and says he was just rethinking his future. Mitsuko immediately accuses him of being someone else and not Yuna, as she wonders how what they've been talking about could mean nothing to Yuna. Uryu gets flustered, so he tells Mitsuko that he's lost his memories. Mitsuko immediately buys it and asks why Yuna didn't say so earlier, when fake Yuna says she doesn't want to worry her. Mitsuko reminds her they're best friends forever. Fake Yuna says she envies Mitsuko for knowing more about Yuna than she does, so Mitsuko says she's sure Yuna is hiding something from her too. She then offers to tell Yuna about herself. When fake Yuna agrees, Mitsuko calls it a date. Later, the girls arrive at a secret hideout, and Mitsuko starts explaining their history. She says she first knew Yuna when they were kids, and she used to visit their dumpling store with her mom. Back then, Yuna just grabbed a bunch of dumplings from Mitsuko, which surprised her and her mom. Instead of recognizing the problem, Yuna insisted on having more dumplings. Just then, fake Uryu sneaks into eavesdrop as fake Yuna asks how Mitsuko became friends with a selfish girl. Mitsuko explains that after Yuna lost her mom, she saw her struggling. Later, at the park, Yuna refused to eat any more sweet dumplings because she was selfish, but Mitsuko shoved some right up her pie hole anyway. From then on, the two girls became inseparable. One day, Mitsuko showed Yuna their vacant store and explained her secret plan to practice making dumplings so she could take over her mom's shop. However, when Mitsuko asked what Yuna's dream was, Yuna's appearance changed. Back in the present, Mitsuko pulls out a book containing Yuna's wish list. Yuna figures he'd finally understand what Yuna's been hiding if he reads it, but he decides he can't bring himself to do it, shocking Yuna. Fake Yuna then confesses to Mitsuko that he's really Yuryu, but Mitsuko says she's known this whole time since Yuna is her best friend and weird things happen in their town. Yuryu asks why she brought him here, so Mitsuko says she wanted to know another version of Yuna. At this, Yuryu decides it wouldn't be right to use this means to learn about Yuna, so he tells the god he's done playing hide-and-seek. The god switches them back to normal, and Yuryu promises they'll take care of it themselves. Moments later, Yuna pigs out to Mitsuko's dumplings, while Mitsuko finds out that Yuryu was chosen as the shrine's heir after all. After they make small talk for a bit, Yuryu asks Yuna what she wants to do that he doesn't know, cueing another flashback. When Chibara was still alive, Yuna had asked her why the shrine was having fewer festivals than the previous year. Chibara then explained that since Chidori was getting older, it was getting harder for him to hold that many festivals. Yuna asked what she could do about it, so Chibara jokingly suggested she become a priest, so Yuna insisted the fossil retire the next day while she took his place. Yuna suggested God would be lonely with fewer festivals, but she really just wanted to eat festival candies all day. After Chibara died, Yuna shared her dream of becoming a priest with Mitsuko, while she wrote down all her ideas to liven up the shrine so it doesn't get shut down. Back in the present, Yuna is embarrassed by her childish dreams, but Yuryu is shocked that her secret is so wholesome and doesn't involve sliding down a pole like he thought. Yuna explains that a woman becoming a priest is really difficult, and since it's a male-dominated position, she would face lots of opposition. Besides, now that Yuryu is determined to become heir to the shrine, she figures he is the best shot the Amigami shrine will ever have. That's why she gave up on her dreams. At this, Yuryu realizes that's why Yuna was trying to decide on a new future. Yuna tells Mitsuko that since Mitsuko was working so hard on her dream, she couldn't bring herself to say she had given up on hers. Mitsuko tells her she's too naive about her friend and asks if she's sure about her decision, but before Yuna can respond, Yuryu interrupts and says Yuna is just giving excuses because she thinks she's not cut out to be a priest. Yuryu then says he wouldn't want to leave the position to someone as pathetic as Yuna, which triggers her. Yuryu adds that once he becomes a priest, they'll fire all the Amigami maidens so they bring fresh ideas to bring more visitors to the shrine. Yuna finally loses it and insists that the goal of being a priest isn't just bringing more people to the shrine, but to have them want to return and pray to God again. Yuryu asks how they can achieve this, so Yuna suggests they get Mitsuko to sell her divine dumplings, but Yuryu says that's just for her expanding waistline. As Yuna continues to defend her position, Yuryu realizes Yuna is just scared of bringing bad luck to people by being selfish, so the solution is to face her head-on and draw her out. Yuryu continues to challenge her ideas, so Yuna outlines a cat shelter idea, along with a dumpling festival and many more festivals. Asahi would become the poster girl and Yae could create cute prizes, which would make God and the visitors happy and create the version of the Amigami shrine she pictures. After pouring out her heart, Yuna says Yuryu is unfit to inherit the shrine, and insists that she'll become the priest instead. Yuryu tells her to bring it on, since she'd probably burn the lab down as a research scientist anyway. As the idiots continue bickering, Mitsuko concludes that they really do look like a couple. Some days later, at the school festival, the school overflows with visitors, which are mostly guys. Mitsuko teases Yuryu that someone just might steal Yuna from him, as the boys hit on them every year. Yuryu realizes it'll be worse since Yuna is a famous shrine maiden now, and just as he thinks, he hears a commotion and rushes over. But to his surprise, it turns out to be Yae, who manhandles the little twerp. Yuryu asks what she's doing there, so she explains that she got separated from Asahi and Mahiru. Yuryu wonders how everyone but him shares a brain cell and offers to stick with her till she finds them, so Yae gets really excited and grabs his hand, suggesting they go around the festival. She even claims the hand-holding is to make the guys think they're a couple so they don't hit on her. When they get to a large labyrinth attraction, Yuryu says they should search for Asahi, but Yae pleads to go in with them for just a second. That look reminds Yuryu of the time Yae said she loves him, and the wimp agrees to go in with her just as Yuna watches them from afar. Mitsuko calls her attention and says they need to hurry, so Yuna agrees but looks sad. Moments later, Yae and Yuna exit the labyrinth when Yurio gets a call from Mahiru. Mahiru says she caught the brain cell disease and somehow lost Asadi, and when she tried to call she didn't pick up. Uryu agrees to look for her and bring her back, so he tells Yae he has to leave and she agrees. Meanwhile, some ugly girl screams her body count from the rooftop.
Oh my God!
While Asadi sits alone, lamenting how her plan to have a secret date with Uryu failed miserably. Now that she's running out of battery, she guesses they just weren't meant to be. Even though she confessed her feelings and kissed Uryu so he'd notice her rivals just seemed too strong. Just then, Asavi hears one of the girls screaming a love confession for the crush she's been stalking, which gives her an idea. At the same time, Uryu runs around the festival looking for Asadi when he suddenly hears her calling into the rooftop, or else she'll reveal his deepest, darkest secret. Uryu bolts to the rooftop faster than your ex bolted from you. He then grabs her and asks if something bad happened and why she called him all this way. Asadi says her phone battery died, which makes Uryu relieved, but when he turns to leave, she pulls him back and announces that she also wants a festival date with him. Yuna hears this and remembers when Asadi accidentally told her about her feelings for Uryu. She tries to convince herself that she's not bothered that her sisters want to get on their knees for Uryu, but not to pray. Later, all the girls fawn over how cute Uryu and Yuna look in their stage outfits. One of the students asks if Uryu and Yuna are going to kiss, since it happens a lot in the story, but Mitsuko interrupts and says that in the original story, it's more about how the characters overcome their hardship, go back to their original genders, and pursue their own dreams. Meanwhile, Mahiru and the others wait for the play to begin when Shirani shows up to join them. The girls joke about how rare it is to see Uryu crossdress and not wanting to miss it. Backstage, Uryu is glad Yae and Asahi reunited but wonders why Shirahi showed up too. Suddenly, Yuna asks Uryu what he thinks about Yae and Asahi and if he's noticed their feelings. In response, Uryu simply says he doesn't have time to think about marriage yet. Moments later, the curtain is drawn and Uryu and Yuna put up an impressive performance with the rest of the class. As Yuna gives a speech about accepting herself, she remembers confessing to Uryu that she was envious of how accepted he was his hair because he's a man. Hearing this, Uryu figures that must be why they swapped bodies, but now Yuna boldly declares that she is who she is and wants to live her own life. In the final scene, Uryu grabs Yuna's hand and kneels to give his speech. At the end, he whispers to Yuna to do her best, which catches her off guard. The curtains close and Shirahi seems to be sweating like she overdosed on laxatives. Yae gets this strange feeling that she's getting another rival when she notices Shirahi is no longer in her seat. Backstage, Uryu is relieved to be done while Yuna gets flustered about their hand-holding session. Uryu teases her at first, but when he sees her airhead side leak out, he starts to suspect something's up, causing her to run off. Later, Yuna mopes on the rooftop, remembering the magic moment they held hands and when he told her to do her best. She tries to grab some salt when Mitsuko shows up and tells her to stop. Yuna explains that her heart beats fast and her body gets hot when Uryu is around. She insists the impurity needs to be cleansed, but Mitsuko tells her it's not impurity or a brain parasite. It's love. Meanwhile, Shirai is making mashed potatoes when she gets a text from Uryu, who's inviting her to study together. The next day, while studying, Uryu can't help but recall how the three sisters reacted towards him like they have feelings for him, and it makes him question whether he has feelings for them too. But during his thoughts, Shirahi notices him. Just then, Asahi pops up with drinks for them, but she almost slips if not for Uryu saving her, and it rizzes her up, which Shirahi notices. She asks to go to the bathroom, and Yae pulls up, offering to take her, but on their way there, Yae expresses to Shirahi how much she wants to see pictures of Uryu before letting her go to the restroom. After the two interactions, Shirahi comes to the conclusion that both sisters want to gobble on Uryu's glizzy. But Shirahi feels jealous as before. Being with Uryu was her special privilege. When she returns to Uryu, he's in the middle of an argument with Yuna, and when he notices how red Yuna is, he plants his forehead onto hers, causing her to fold more than your fat mom in front of food, but Shirahi feels even more conflicted. Later, Shirahi is about to go home when she shoots her shot at Uryu, inviting him to replace like the old days. And while he wants to, they suddenly hear how the sisters are arguing inside chaotically with Uryu not being there. So Uryu has no choice but to reject Shirahi's generous offer, which breaks her heart. At home, Shirahi dwells in her own feelings, realizing that ever since Uryu joined the shrine, he has become a person that she never knew about, and it makes her realize that she doesn't have a place alongside him anymore like how she used to. Deep down, Shirahi wants nothing more than to see the old him, and when she gets a text from her friend telling her about a magical shrine that grants wishes, it gives her an idea. Meanwhile, Iryu and the sisters are discussing the Kurogami shrine, who are known to grant wishes from wanting to clap someone to growing 6 inches. So the group decides to visit it the next day. On the way there, Iryu is gassed due to the lack of cardio while the girls walk without breaking a sweat. But Iryu gets curious about something. He asks them what their wishes are in the shrine, and the girls think about it. Yuna wants to eat the special dango every day with Iryu by her side, while Asadi wants to win the marathon, defeating Karen, and with Iryu there congratulating her as his lover, while Ieda wants to go on a date with Iryu where he suddenly starts dancing like he's in a boy band before giving her a bouquet of flowers and asking her to be his baby mama. However, when they arrive at the shrine, they can feel a bad aura there due to the shrine being abandoned, and when a crow makes a noise, Yuna gets scared. Iryu feels like he sees someone, but after brushing it off, the girls discuss what he wants to wish for. They suspect he wishes to get into the university, but he informs them that he doesn't need any god to get into the university, and assures them that he will get into the university using his doctor's stone-like knowledge. While the girls call him stubborn, they somewhat agree with his statement about hard work, so they just decide to pay their respects to Kurogami before going home. When they walk back home, they see what they truly wished for, which is for them to stick together, and they deem it God's will. However, as they are leaving, Shiori sneaks in from behind, and she starts praying to Kurogami, begging desperately for her wish to come true, which is for the 3 sisters to be replaced by her presence, and for her to be the main person in Yuryu's life. Suddenly, Iryu can feel something strange happening, and when he looks at the sisters, they start fading before he wakes up like it's just a dream. He sees that he's back at his old home, which confuses him, and when he goes to the bathroom, he walks into Shihari in all her glory, with melons bigger than usual. He quickly falls back, but Shihari teases him, saying how they should shower and get wet together, which causes Iryu to have his period. He quickly runs away to the Amigami shrine to go home, and when he gets there, he acts like usual in front of the sister. But to his surprise, the sisters treat him with hostility. They claim that they don't know who he is or why he's here, and despite his pleads, they tell this creep to leave or they will call the FBI. He doesn't know what's happening, so he goes back home where Shirati is present, and while she greets him back, Iryu sits down on the couch, depressed about how the sisters treated him. Seeing how down he is, Shiori approaches him and gives him a kiss on the cheek, which surprises him. While Yu2 is confused, Shihari tells him to open up to her, and to his shock, Shihari declares them as boyfriend and girlfriend. In his dreams, he tries to convince the 3 sisters that they know each other and that he is destined to marry one of them. But when all 3 of them call him a creep like he's Diddy, Iryu wakes with writings on his face that Shirahi wrote on him. He gets greeted by Shirahi and Mahiru for breakfast, and Mahiru tells him that his fevered dream of a shrine adopting him and him marrying 3 sisters is impossible. But Mahiru assures him that he should focus on his studies and that he can stay at the foster care for as long as he needs. Iryu realizes that in this world, neither he nor Shirahai has left the foster home, and they have gone to the same school. Unlike in his previous world, he now gets recommendations to enter his dream university, and he and Shirahi are dating. During lunch, Shirahi acts lovey-dovey with Iryu, but when he acts coldly towards her advances, Shirahi expresses how despite his coldness, she still likes him for it. It gives Iryu the creeps whenever he sees Shirahi being so loving towards him, and despite he has a chance to clap her, he wants nothing more than to return to his original world. He shows Shirahi a badly drawn version of the 3 sisters, asking her if she knows who they are, and Shirahi tells him that she doesn't recognize 3 clap-looking shrine sisters. She suspects that Iryu might be on cloud 9 after taking crack, but Iryu assures her that the real him is taken in by a shrine and is now living with a new family. When he mentions how in that world they're not dating, Shirahi feels down and gets upset at him, thinking he wants to break up, and calls him a lint-willy loser before running away. Just then, Mayura shows up, and after what happened, she tells Iryu to be more considerate with Shuri's feelings. She reminds him of how he first met Shirahi and how he sat next to her while she was crying, refusing to leave her side so she could feel better. While Iryu is cringing at his weak Riz, Mahira feels that his awkward Riz is the reason Shirahi is attracted to him, and that from that day, Shirahi studied hard every day so she could be next to him. After hearing that, Iryu pulls out the same Riz he did before, sits next to her on the floor, and tells her that he wants to study next to her. She understands what he's trying to do, so she leans her head on his while he studies. That night, Iryu realizes that in this world, he gets everything that he wants without an issue, but when he imagines the 3 sisters, he feels restless. The next day, Iryu is studying when Shirei asks him for a shower head, but realizing she's in the bathroom. Yuryu imagines both girls wanting to double-team him, which causes him to get another period from his nose. Moments later, he knocks on the door, and when Shirati opens, he hands her a shower head on a baton to stop himself from creaming. Later, he walks past a mother talking about what's for dinner with her child, and it reminds Yuryu of whether the girls have eaten without him being there. Suddenly, a girl runs into him, and when Yuryu sees who it is, he sees that it's Asahi. She starts panicking, calling him a creep out of fear of him being ditty with the baby oil. But when Yuryu shows that he's worried for her feet due to her competing in marathons, Asahi folds for a second before getting scared again. She runs away from him, and in her mind, she thinks about the possibility of Yuryu being a good person. But when she looks back, she sees Yuryu chasing him like she wants to gobble her cheeks, so she has no choice but to pick up the pace to get back home. When they arrive at the shrine, she calls for her sisters to help her, and without skipping a beat, Yaya lays the smackdown on Yuryu to stop him, telling him to stop running after girls. However, when she sees that Yuryu has Asahi's red ribbon, they all realize that he wanted to return it to her. So, Asahi apologizes for calling him ditty, and thanks him for returning her red ribbon. Before the girls walk away, Yuryu goes on the floor to apologize for scaring them, and tells them the truth about being from another world where they are family. He tells them how he's willing to be there for them, and to help them whenever they need him. And the girls slowly see memories that are not from their world. Yuna appreciates his bravery in proposing something like that, but rejects his proposal, telling him to go home. However, before Yuryu walks away, Yaya stops him, asking if they have met before in the past, and Yuryu remembers that they did meet before in the past. Meanwhile, Maharu and Shirahi are waiting for Yuryu to come home, but Shirahi tells Maharu that she's going to find him, saying that she knows where he is. Back with Yuryu, Yaya sits close to him, saying how it was because of Yuryu in the past that was able to come into the shrine. The other sisters don't know that Yaya has a past like that, and Yuryu reveals how he knows that they aren't actual blood sisters, and that they became sisters through circumstances, which makes the girls believe that he is really from another world. However, Yuna still believes that they don't need his help around the shrine, but when Yuryu gets involved, he shows how he's familiar with cooking for them, with how to fold their clothes, and with how messy Yaya's room really is. After a whole day of him helping around, Yuryu feels like he has proven himself to be capable of helping around the shrine. But Yuna believes that while he has shown that he's more than capable, Yuryu doesn't belong here. The girls tell him that the three sisters who need him are in another world, so they decide that they will find a way to help him go back to his world. The girls discuss ways that they can do it, from summoning Trutkun to letting him meet himself to his death. But when Yuryu sees just how much the girls care, he expresses just how much he loves the three of them. It folds all three of them, and Yuna sprays salt on him, telling him to die. When it's time for him to leave, they plan to meet again to talk about plans. But when Yuryu opens the shrine door, they are greeted by a wet Shirahi, who ran through the rain to find him, and she grabs onto Yuryu, apologizing to the sisters with how her baby daddy has been bothering them. Moments later, Shirahi thanks the girls for letting her stay as she changes out of her wet clothes. The girls tell her to get warm in the meantime while they interrogate Yuryu for having a smoking hot baby mama and still wanting 3 more. Yuryu explains that when he came to their world, he was already dating Shirai, so Yuna tells him to dump her if he likes girls with bigger cup sizes. However, when Yuryu explains that he doesn't want to hurt her feelings, Yuna asks him to reconsider if his so-called kindness is for her sake or his. Later, Yuna tells the happy couple that they still have to sleep in separate rooms. When they agree, Yae shows Yuryu to his old room in his previous world. Once he's left alone, he celebrates finally seeing something nostalgic, but is interrupted when he remembers Yuna's advice to dump Shirai like last week's garbage. Just then, Yuryu hears a knock on his door, and it turns out to be Shirai, who asks to stay with him till she gets sleepy. Yuryu agrees, but when Shirai walks in with a shirt that's barely serving any purpose, asking to do it, Yuryu freaks out. Thankfully, the it she wanted to do was study. Outside the room, the girls are surprised nothing unholy is going on this time and decide to sneak away from the door. Back in the room, Yuryu tries to talk to Shirati, when he notices she's already done with her questions. When Shirati sees that Yuryu's not done, she reminds him that they're doing this for their dream, which is to open a hospital and expand the orphanage. She confesses that she'd like to do things a regular couple would do, but has to hold back for now. Because of this, she suggests they save their first time till after their exams, causing Yuryu's universe to explode. A while later, Yuryu notices Shirahi already fallen asleep, but when he tries to wake her, Shirahi sleep talks and tells him she's sorry. The next morning, Shirahi wakes up to find Yuryu looking awful, wondering if he didn't get any sleep. Yuryu says that he spent the whole night waiting to talk to her, so he asks if she changed their world. Shirahi's smile fades as she confesses that she prayed to the Kurigami god that he wouldn't end up at the shrine so he could stay with her. Yuryu apologizes for having to soil the air with awkwardness because he didn't notice her feelings sooner, but Shirahi disagrees and cries that it was her fault he didn't notice. She was scared to confess her feelings because she thought he might reject her, so she decided to get his attention by pranking him instead. She remembers the day Mahiru told him Yuryu would be visiting and suggested they talk, but Shirahi declined, claiming she didn't want to disturb him. However, when she saw him get close to girls with bigger racks, except Acity, she decided to come out of hiding. Shirahi reminds him that Yuryu had always said he didn't need any god to grant his wishes, but ever since he started living with the girls, he changed and it made her panic. She tried her best to ignore it, all while making prayers to end up in the same university as Yuryu, but ultimately failed. Shirahi begins to cry as she apologizes for making the prayer that changed their worlds and messed up Yuryu's life, but she admits that she didn't want anyone to take her place by his side. At this, Yuryu thanks her for revealing her true feelings, even though he has no idea what to do next. He offers her his chest to cry on so Acity, and the girls interrupt before things start to get fishy. Yuryu tells them to stay out of it, and insists they're going home now, but when he sees the look on Shuri's face, he suggests they stop somewhere first. Moments later, they arrive at the shrine and Yuryu suggests they get a talisman. Shirahi tells him he doesn't have to be nice to her since she hijacked his life, but is suddenly interrupted by a little boy praying to God that his unborn brother remains unborn. Shirahi worries this might trigger Yuryu, but he simply laughs it off. Afterward, Yuryu leads Shirahi to pray and explains that he used to pray every day for his mother till she went to dap with the Lord. Since then, he tried to do things on his own, but now he doesn't want to deny the feelings of anyone praying to God. That's what the girls taught him. He then adds that his wish to become a doctor hasn't changed, but now he has a new one, which is to save people praying to God. Shirahi is moved by his speech when they both notice the girls looking sad. When they rush over, the girls explain that their part-time maiden canceled on them, so Yuryu offers to cross-dress as one and save the day. Yuna sprays salt to purify him, and then Shirahi offers to help them fill the role. Moments later, the girls dress Shirahi up in the uniform, and she starts handing out talismans. After handing a love talisman to a simp who reminds her of herself, Shirahi figures this must be what Yuryu was talking about. As Yuryu watches the girls have fun, he starts to think the world isn't so bad after all. That evening, Shirahi apologizes to everyone for screwing with their worlds, but the girls hug her, feeling bad about what she was going through. Yuryu says he's glad he got to visit this world, so Shirahi agrees that she's happy she knows his true feelings so they can finally go home. When Yuryu asks if she knows how to, Shirahi suggests they go back to the Kurigami shrine and promises to find a way back. The girls offer to help since they know someone who might know what to do, so Yuryu suggests they make some memories before heading back. The next day, Yuryu and Shirahi arrive as guests for the Amigami festival and Yuryu stops Asahi from knocking over her boxes. As he cracks up at how clumsy she is, Shirahi stares like a third wheel. Next, they check out Ye's talismans and compliment her. But when she looks sad that they'll be leaving, Yuryu cheers her up by telling her he'll cherish their memories, while Shirahi once again wonders if she's a potato who doesn't deserve love. Lastly, they find Yuna stuffing her face with dumplings, so Yuryu scolds her about her eating habits, while Shirahi starts to accept her status as invisible. Afterward, Shirahi says she can't wait to see the girls dance, and Yuryu realizes it'll be his first time watching as a visitor. While they wait, Shirahi asks him what he thinks of the girls, but Yuryu apologizes because he can't put it into words. Just then, the girls finally put on their famous festival dance, and Shirahi is excited by how good they are till she notices Yuryu almost drooling and finally has her answer. Later, the girls thank Yuryu and Shirahi for attending the festival and tell them there's someone they'd like them to meet. Just then, Yomiko walks up and Yuryu can't believe his eyes while she asks who he is. Moments later, Yomiko tells the group she understands that Yuryu and Shirahi are from another world. Shirahi is shocked that she easily believed them, but Yomiko explains that God's ways are different from theirs, so it could happen. Yuryu figures she must know a lot about weird phenomena and hopes to count on her. But Yomiko loses focus and tries to scout Shirahi as a shrine maiden since she's got the right assets for the job. After joking around, she offers to tell them everything she knows. The girls admit that the whole thing feels like science fiction to them, But Yamako tells them that they're all actually familiar with it. She explains that the phenomenon Uryu is experiencing is called tying the knot. She explains that every world that isn't your current world is called a separate world. So Shiraihi asks what that has to do with tying the knot, so Yomiko grabs a board to explain. If in one world, a chick and fox were meant to be together, there are many other worlds where the chick gets freaky with other animals. All the possibilities are in the palm of God's hand, so he could connect two worlds where one isn't connected with their crush with one where one is. Yomiko asks if they understand now, but Uryu isn't sure. He looks to the others, and Ase, he seems to have suffered brain damage, while Yuna assumes the MCU must be real. Yaya couldn't be bothered to stay awake, while Shiraihi surprisingly understood it all. Yamako decides to cut it short and explains that if they want to return to their world, they'll need to go back to the god that granted their wish. She then wishes them luck and tries to leave, but Uryu says he has one more question for her. Uryu points out that Shiraihi was the one who made the wish, so he wonders why he also has his memories. According to her theory, he ought to have memories of their world, but Yamako tells him it's too early for him to know. Hearing this, Uryu insists that Yomiko has memories of him from the previous world. Yamako tries to play dumb, but Uryu figures she probably remembers the Tanabata too. Uryu asks why she won't tell him if she's on their side, so Yamako corrects him and explains that she's on God's side. She then tells him that no matter how cruel his choices are, he needs to remember their conversation and prepare himself. After Yamako leaves, Uryu decides the whole thing is too complicated to waste brain cells thinking about. He suggests they do what they need to do, so Shiraihi says they'll head to the Kurigami shrine the next day. Meanwhile, that creepy fox god watches them from afar as she commends Yomiko on her acting. Yomiko joins her and holds up a god mask, explaining that this event would become key to their lives. The next day, the gang heads up the mountains to the shrine. When the girls think of the Kurigami god charm, Yuna says she wished to be suffocated by kittens, while Asadi says she'd wish for divine plastic surgery. Yae says she'd wish to fly, and hearing this, Uryu wished he could be put out of his misery. The girls suddenly chorus that the only ones who could grant their wishes was themselves, shocking Uryu as it's exactly what he said in the other world. When they reach the shrine, the girls tell them they'll be heading back, but it isn't a goodbye since they are connected in every world. When the girls leave, Shuri asks if she can come over to the shrine to study, but when Uryu tells her she can, the Kurigami god appears and tells them the bond of people is a wretched thing. Uryu sees the mask is similar to the fox god's mask, while Shiraihi prays to return to their world and accept her punishment. The Kurigami god asks if she's sure she won't regret her choice, and when Shiraihi says she won't, the god tries to touch her, but Uryu gets in the way. He points out that it seems too good to be true and asks if Shiraihi will really come out safe. The god then explains that since they're in a world where they are bound by a knot, Shiraihi will have to pay the price for severing that bond to return to their original world. The god then snaps them into another realm and explains that they're at a crossroads. One path led to their old world while the other led to their current world, so they needed to decide if they wanted to return. Uryu remembers Yomiko's words about a cruel choice and figures this is what she meant. When Shiraihi sees him struggling, she musters up the courage to tell him she loves him, listing all the qualities she's always loved about him. She confesses that she really wants to stay by his side and apologizes for not doing this sooner, but she asks him to tell her how he really feels. Uryu thinks of the girls and finally decides to be honest. He starts by thanking her for being honest and begins to compliment her good qualities, but when Shiraihi realizes what he's doing, she gets pissed and tells him not to dump her with some template he found on Reddit. She demands he stop trying to play it cool and tell her how he really feels. Uryu then reveals that he wants to make the girls happy, but even he doesn't understand his feelings for them. He's confused about whether they're familial or romantic, but ever since they left their original world, he realized he wanted to stay with them forever. Even after hearing about tying the knot in the crossroads, all he wanted was to make them happy with his hands and not anyone else's. He confesses that he wants to go back to his world with Yea, Yuna, and Asadi and tie the knot with the Amagami sisters. Shiraihi understands and thanks the Kurigami god for granting her wish. The god reminds her that if she goes back, her bond with him will be broken, and they can never be together again. But Shiraihi decides she'll tie her knots by herself like he did in this world. They then walk to the other side, and the Kurigami god disappears. As they keep walking, Shiraihi notices that the world seems to be spinning, so Uryu is glad to say goodbye to the old world. He greets Shirahi goodbye, and even though she looks like she'll cry, she tells him goodbye too. Moments later, Uryu wakes up back in his room and wonders where the girls are. He begins to search the whole house, including their rooms, but sees no sign of them till he opens the bathroom and walks into plot. As Uryu stares longer than he should, he gets his period while his water breaks at the same time. Later, the girls put him to work on a barbecue as punishment for peeping on them. Mako, Karen, and Mitsuko also show up to the party to make it livelier. To Uryu's surprise, even that creep Moe-mon shows up, but when Yomiko pulls up with Mahiru, he runs for the hills. Shirahi also shows up, but before Uryu can make things awkward, the girls call him over so they can have more of his meat. The fox god continues to watch over the shrine as Uryu and Chidori watch everyone having fun. Uryu then stares at his future baby mamas, who call for him to join the fun. If you enjoyed the video, comment 3 baby mamas are better than on. And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.